Hello guys, welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash mastered the secrets of Mega Evolution and decided to get married with Korrina. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Master of the Tower. The salt-laced wind of the Shalar coast was a familiar song, one that carried the cries of wind gull and the distant, rhythmic crash of waves against the cliffs. Here, on the polished stone arena behind the Tower of Mastery, the only sound that mattered was the percussive, thunderous impact of a battle reaching its crescendo. The air itself thrummed with power, thick and electric. Korrina, sweat beading on her brow and plastering a stray blonde bang to her temple, moved with the explosive grace of a coiled spring. She was a blur of orange and black, her roller skates grinding against the stone as she pivoted. Lucario, Bone Rush, now. Close the distance. Her own Lucario, a mirror of her fierce energy, shot forward. A staff of pure blue aura materialized in its paws, and it spun into a whirlwind of strikes, each one aimed with surgical precision at the towering opponent before them. The strikes landed not with the crack of bone on metal, but with a series of deep, resonant thwumps, as if hitting a wall of solid muscle. Their opponent, a Blaziken of immense stature, didn't even flinch. It stood like a crimson statue, its arms crossed. The only movement was the subtle shift of its weight, parrying the furious assault with casual deflections of its forearms. The air around it shimmered with heat, and from the megalith embedded in the band on its wrist, a rainbow fire pulsed with every beat of its heart. This was Mega Blaziken, and it was a fortress. It's no good, Korrina. We can't break his guard. Ash's voice cut through the din, calm and clear. He stood on the opposite side of the arena, his own Lucario at his side, poised and waiting. He wore a simple red and black jacket, unzipped over a dark gray shirt, his jeans worn and comfortable. The years had sharpened the lines of his face, replacing the last vestiges of boyish roundness with a lean, confident jaw. His raven hair was just as untamed, but the eyes beneath the brim of his familiar cap held a depth that spoke of countless battles won and lessons learned. He was no longer just a challenger, he was a presence. Don't have to break it, just have to move it. Korrina shot back, a grin flashing across her face. Grandfather's getting slow in his old age. Across the arena, the old master, Gherkin, chuckled. His deep, booming laugh was as much a part of the tower as the stones themselves. Slow, am I? This old man can still teach you a thing or two about patience, granddaughter. With a flick of his wrist, his Blaziken's posture changed. It uncrossed its arms, its legs coiling. Blaze kick. In a heartbeat, the fortress became a missile. Blaziken launched itself forward, its leg wreathed in a vortex of fire that screamed through the air. Korrina's Lucario, caught off guard by the sudden switch from defense to overwhelming offense, barely had time to bring its Bone Rush staff up into a defensive block. The impact was titanic. The aura staff shattered into a shower of blue sparks, and her Lucario was sent skidding back across the stone, digging its claws in to stop just short of the arena's edge. Now, Ash! Korrina yelled, not with panic, but with perfect, practiced timing. Ash didn't need the command. He and his Lucario had already moved. They flowed across the battlefield like a single entity, their steps synchronized. This wasn't a trainer giving orders and a Pokemon obeying, it was a dance. As Blaziken's foot hit the ground, its back now turned to Ash, Ash's Lucario was already there. Aura Sphere, Ash said, his voice barely above a murmur. His Lucario's paws came together. The sphere of energy that formed between them wasn't the rushed, desperate blast of a cornered Pokemon. It was a dense, perfectly compressed ball of crackling blue light, humming with controlled power. It launched, not as a projectile, but as an extension of Lucario's will, striking Blaziken squarely in the back. The resulting explosion of energy was enough to make the Colossus stagger. Gherkin's eyes widened in approval. Excellent coordination. But coordination alone won't secure victory. He pumped a fist. Blaziken, high jump kick on Ash's Lucario. Let's end this. The firefighting behemoth recovered instantly, twisting in the air and rocketing towards Ash's Lucario, its knee glowing with devastating power. Korrina saw the danger. Lucario, intercept. Her Pokémon, loyal and fearless, charged forward to take the blow, to shield its partner. But Ash raised a hand, a small, subtle gesture. Hold, he commanded, his voice unwavering. His own Lucario didn't move to dodge. It stood its ground, its red eyes locked on the incoming attack. Pikachu, watching from the sidelines with his arms crossed, gave a confident "cha." The space between Ash and his Lucario seemed to shimmer, a faint blue haze connecting them that was almost invisible in the bright afternoon sun. It was aura, raw and potent, a silent conversation passing between man and Pokémon. To an outsider, it looked like suicide. To Korrina, who had seen it 100 times, it was the prelude to something extraordinary. Blaziken was feet away, the heat from its attack washing over them. Ash didn't shout. He didn't gesture to his wrist, where a simple, dark leather band held a keystone that seemed to drink the sunlight. He simply met his Lucario's gaze, and in that shared moment, a universe of trust and power was exchanged. Now. The keystone on Ash's wrist flared to life, not with the typical brilliant flash, but with a deep, pulsating hum. At the exact same instant, the Lucarionite on the back of his Pokémon's paw ignited. A torrent of multicolored energy erupted, not from the stones, but from the bond between them. Ribbons of light, gossamer thin and brighter than a prism, wove a cocoon around Lucario. The transformation was instantaneous, silent, and perfect. There was no roar of exertion, no blinding explosion. One moment, there was Lucario. The next, Mega Lucario stood in its place, its form longer, sleeker, the red on its fur brighter, the dreadlock-like appendages on its head whipping in the sudden vortex of its own power. Black markings streaked its body like war paint, and its eyes burned with an intelligent, focused crimson light. It all happened in the fraction of a second it took Mega Blaziken's high jump kick to travel the final few feet. Mega Lucario didn't block. It didn't counter. It simply wasn't there. With a burst of speed that was physically impossible a moment before, it sidestepped the attack. Mega Blaziken's knee slammed into the stone where it had been standing, cracking the ground and sending a web of fissures spidering out. As Blaziken struggled to recover its balance from the missed high-risk move, Mega Lucario was already behind it. Its paw, now tipped with sharp spikes, glowed with the steely light of metal claw. It didn't strike to injure. It moved with fluid grace, hooking one spike under the band holding Blaziken's megalith and placing its other paw flat against the small of its back. A firm, decisive push. Thrown off balance and unable to find its footing, the massive Mega Blaziken stumbled forward, its momentum working against it. It crashed to one knee, its charge dissipated, its power momentarily spent. Mega Lucario stood over it, not with aggression, but with the quiet finality of a checkmate. The battle was over. A beat of silence hung in the air. Then, Gherkin threw his head back and laughed, a full-throated roar of delight and pride. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. The Mega Evolution on both Pokémon faded, the rainbow energy receding back into their stones. Blaziken, now back in its base form, gave a tired but respectful nod to Ash's Lucario before returning to its master's side. Korrina skated over, her own Lucario trotting beside her. She pulled up next to Ash, a brilliant, breathless smile on her face. "Show off," she said, nudging him with her shoulder. There was no jealousy in her voice, only pure, unadulterated awe. She was the successor, the one whose entire life was dedicated to the art of Mega Evolution, and yet what Ash could do was something beyond the scrolls, beyond the teachings. It was something innate, something a part of his very soul. No commands, no chant. Just, a look. I'll never get used to seeing that. "We've had a lot of practice," Ash said, scratching his Lucario behind the ears. The powerful Pokémon leaned into the touch with a soft noise of contentment. It's not about the words anymore. It's about feeling. We know what the other needs before we even think it. Gherkin approached, his broad smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. You say, feeling, Ash. I say, mastery. The ancient texts speak of aura guardians who could resonate with their partners on such a level, but to see it in the flesh, to see it used to perfect the art of mega evolution, you have surpassed the tradition, my boy. You have created something new. Ash simply shrugged, a faint blush on his cheeks. He was never one for long speeches about his own abilities. His power was demonstrated, not explained. Lucario does all the hard work. I just try to keep up. Gherkin clapped him on the shoulder, a gesture that would have staggered a smaller man. Humility is a fine quality in a master. Come. The sun is setting. Let us go up to the pinnacle. A view like this is the perfect reward for a battle well fought. The climb up the Tower of Mastery was a familiar one. The winding stone staircase, worn smooth by centuries of masters and successors, spiraled up into the sky. As they ascended, the sounds of the city and the sea faded, replaced by the whisper of the wind flowing through the tower's arched windows. Ash and Korrina walked side by side, their hands brushing. After a moment, their fingers intertwined, a simple, comfortable gesture that spoke of years of companionship that had slowly, surely, blossomed into something deeper. Pikachu scampered up Ash's arm to his usual perch, his tail flicking contentedly. Gherkin walked ahead of them, his presence filling the stairwell. He didn't speak, granting them the silence. He knew this climb was as much for them as it was for him. They emerged onto the highest balcony, a circular platform open to the sky. The world spread out beneath them. The setting sun painted the sky in fiery strokes of orange, pink, and deep violet, its light glinting off the endless expanse of the ocean. The city of Shalar was a collection of warm, glowing lights beginning to flicker on as twilight descended. The air was cool and clean. For a few minutes, they just stood there, watching the day die. It was a moment of profound peace, a stark contrast to the thundering energy of the battle below. You know, Korrina said softly, her head leaning against Ash's shoulder, I used to come up here when I was a kid, after you left Kalos the first time. I'd look out at the ocean and wonder where you were. What new gym you were challenging, what ridiculous trouble you'd gotten yourself into. Ash chuckled, a low, warm sound. Probably all of the above. He squeezed her hand. I did the same. Whenever I saw a Lucario or a fighting-type gym, I'd think of you. The roller skating girl who was too stubborn to lose. Hey. I'm still stubborn, she retorted, but there was no heat in it. She turned to face him, her blue eyes reflecting the last rays of the sun. I'm glad you came back, Ash. I'm glad you stayed. His journeying days weren't over, not entirely. He was still Ash Ketchum. The call of a new region, a new challenge, would always be a part of him. But he was different now. His travels were no longer a frantic quest to be the very best, but a more measured exploration of the world and his place in it. And more, he found his path leading back here. To Shalar. To her. She was his anchor, the home he returned to after every storm. I'm glad I stayed, too, he said, his voice serious now. His other hand came up to gently cup her cheek. His thumb traced the line of her jaw. The usual easygoing humor was gone from his eyes, replaced by a raw, open sincerity that made her heart beat a little faster. Korrina, he began, and the way he said her name made the air feel still and quiet. We've been through a lot together. From our first battle here, to figuring out Mega Evolution, to you helping me with Greninja. We've fought against each other, and we've fought alongside each other. And every time, win or lose, I felt stronger. Not just as a trainer, but as a person. He took a slow breath, gathering his thoughts. This was harder than facing down a legendary Pokémon. You ground me, he continued, his voice thick with emotion. You're the one I want to tell when I discover something new. You're the one I want to see when I get back from a long trip. When I'm not with you, it feels like a part of my team is missing. The most important part. Korrina's eyes were wide, luminous in the twilight. She could feel the tremble in his hand, could see the vulnerability he so rarely showed to anyone. He released her hand and reached into the pocket of his jacket. When he pulled his hand out, he held a small, simple black box. He opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was a ring. It was a simple, elegant band of polished silver, but the stone it held was not a diamond or a jewel. It was a perfect, spherical stone, smooth and gray, with a familiar, faint internal iridescence. It was a keystone, pure and uncarved. A blank slate. A promise. The world is full of amazing things, Korrina, Ash said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Pokémon, new regions, ancient mysteries. I still want to see it all. But I don't want to see it alone anymore. I want to see it with you. I want to build a life with you, face every battle with you, right here. I love you. He knelt, not with theatrical pomp, but with a simple, earnest reverence, holding the ring up to her. Korrina, successor of Shalar City, he said, a small, nervous smile finally breaking through his serious expression. Will you marry me? For a moment, Korrina couldn't breathe. The ocean, the sky, the tower, it all faded away into a blur of color and light, with Ash as the only clear point in the universe. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring his image. They weren't tears of sadness, but of overwhelming, explosive joy. A laugh bubbled up from her chest, mixing with a sob. You idiot, she breathed, wiping at her eyes with the back of her glove. Of course, yes. Yes. She practically tackled him, wrapping her arms around his neck as he rose to his feet. He stumbled back a step, laughing as he caught her, spinning her around in a tight embrace. Their lips met in a kiss that was both messy and perfect, full of laughter and tears and the shared certainty of this one, perfect moment. Pikachu let out a triumphant Pika Pikachu, and did a little backflip on Ash's shoulder. When they finally broke apart, breathless and beaming, Ash gently took her left hand and slid the ring onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. The uncarved keystone seemed to absorb the twilight, holding a quiet, potent energy. It's a new keystone, Ash explained, his voice still shaky with happiness. For us. So we can carve our own symbol into it. Together. Korrina looked from the ring to his face, her heart feeling like it might burst. It's perfect, she whispered. Ash, it's... Her words were cut off by a piercing, jarring sound that ripped through the peaceful evening. A high-pitched siren, blaring from the base of the tower. The emergency alert. It was a sound that hadn't been used in years. They instantly broke apart, the blissful bubble of their engagement shattering. Their trainer instincts, honed by 1,000 crises, took over. They ran to the edge of the balcony, looking down towards the city. Flashing lights were converging on the coastal road leading out of Shalar, towards a small fishing village a few miles away. Gherkin was already at the balcony's intercom, his face grim. What is it? Report. A frantic voice, crackling with static and panic, came through the speaker. It was the local officer Jenny. Master Gherkin. We have a situation. A Pokémon is on a rampage on the coastal highway. It's a Garchomp, but it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's mega evolved, but it's out of control. It's tearing the place apart. Ash and Korrina exchanged a look. A mega evolved Pokémon on a rampage? Without a trainer to command it? That shouldn't be possible. Mega evolution was a product of the bond between a human and a Pokémon. It required sync, trust. An out-of-control Mega was a terrifying contradiction. We're on our way, Ash said, his voice leaving no room for argument. The joy of the moment was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. Be careful, you two. Gherkin called after them as they sprinted for the stairs. Something about this feels wrong. The descent was a blur of motion. Korrina, skates already on, led the way, leaping down entire flights of stairs and grinding down the curved railings. Ash was right behind her, his movements agile and sure-footed, Pikachu a yellow streak on his shoulder. There was no more talk of rings or futures. There was only the mission. They burst out of the tower's main doors and onto the street. The sounds of destruction were now audible even from here, a deep, guttural roaring and the sickening crunch of metal and rock. This way. Korrina pointed, and they took off, a streak of orange and red against the deepening twilight. They were faster than any vehicle in the city's narrow, winding streets. They moved as one, a seamless partnership of speed and agility. They cleared the edge of the city in minutes, rounding a bend onto the coastal highway. The scene before them was one of chaos. Cars were overturned, one of them torn completely in half. The road was gouged with massive claw marks, and a section of the cliffside guardrail was simply gone. Frightened villagers were huddled behind a police barricade, their faces pale with terror. And in the middle of it all was the Garchomp. It was Mega Garchomp, its body larger, its sickle-like arms elongated into massive, terrifying scythes. But this was not the majestic power of a champion's Pokémon. This was a perversion. Dark, violent energy, the color of a deep bruise, pulsed around its body in ragged, uncontrolled waves. Its eyes, normally sharp and intelligent, were glowing with a feral, crimson madness. It wasn't fighting, it was flailing. It slammed its scythe arms into the cliffs, sending showers of rock onto the road, roaring a sound that was not a challenge, but a scream of pure, undiluted agony. Ash skidded to a halt, his eyes narrowing. He could feel it. The aura in the air was twisted, corrupted. It was a knot of pain and rage, so thick it felt like wading through sludge. That's not Mega Evolution, Korrina said, her voice tight with horror. That's a sickness. Look, Ash pointed. Around the Garchomp's thick neck, partially hidden by the spasming dark energy, was a metallic collar. It wasn't a Mega Stone holder. It was a crude, technological ring of dark metal, and from it, faint purple sparks were arcing into the Pokémon's skin. It was the source. Officer Jenny ran up to them, her face grim. Ash. Korrina. We can't get close. It attacks anything that moves. Its trainer is over there, he's unconscious. He just kept yelling it won't listen, before he collapsed. Ash's gaze swept from the pained Garchomp to the distant, prone figure of its trainer, then back. His decision was instant. We're not here to beat it. We're here to save it. How? Korrina asked, her Lucario stepping forward, paws already glowing with nascent power. We can't even get near it without it trying to rip us to shreds. You'll be the distraction, Ash said, his strategic mind already piecing together a plan. Your Lucario is faster. Keep it occupied. Draw its fire, but stay on the defensive. Don't let it corner you. I need to get close. Get close. Ash, it'll kill you. It won't, he said with a certainty that calmed her nerves. It's in pain. It's lashing out. It doesn't know what it's doing. He looked at his own Lucario. You're with me. We need to disable that collar. Korrina nodded, her expression hardening with determination. All right. Let's do it. She touched the keystone on her glove. Lucario, let's go. Beyond evolution. Mega Evolve. Her keystone and her Lucario's stone flared in a brilliant, traditional flash of light. When it faded, her Mega Lucario stood ready, its body thrumming with power. With a sharp nod from Korrina, it shot forward, becoming a blue and black blur. Garchomp's attention is on us. Korrina shouted, skating in a wide arc. The berserk Mega Garchomp swiveled, its mad red eyes locking onto the new threat. It let out another agonized roar and charged, swinging its massive scythe arms in wild, clumsy arcs. Korrina's Mega Lucario was a phantom, weaving between the devastating blows, the wind from the near misses strong enough to tear at its fur. It used Bone Rush not to strike, but to parry, to deflect the Garchomp's claws away from itself and the surrounding cliffs. It was a dangerous, deadly dance, buying Ash precious seconds. Ash and his Lucario moved in tandem, using the distraction to circle around the raging battle. They stayed low, using the overturned cars as cover. Ash's eyes were closed. He wasn't looking with them. He was seeing the world as a tapestry of aura. He saw Korrina and her Lucarios, a bright, steady flame of gold. He saw the Garchomps, a brilliant core of blue and white light being strangled and consumed by a writhing, parasitic mass of oily purple-black energy. And he saw the source of that corruption, the collar, a void that was pumping poison into the Pokémon's very essence. There, he whispered, opening his eyes. They had a clear path. Lucario, stay close. While the Garchomp was locked in a furious exchange with Korrina's Mega Lucario, Ash and his partner burst from cover. They ran straight for the rampaging dragon's blind spot. Extreme speed. Ash commanded. His Lucario shot forward, its body cloaked in a white aura, moving faster than the eye could follow. It didn't attack. It slammed its shoulder into the back of Garchomp's knee, buckling its leg. The giant Pokémon roared in surprise and stumbled, its balance momentarily broken. That was the opening. Now, Pikachu, Thunderbolt on the collar. Ash yelled. Pikachu, who had been waiting for this exact moment, leaped from Ash's shoulder. Pikachu. A massive bolt of lightning, far more powerful than any ordinary Pikachu could produce, slammed directly into the metal collar. The device sparked violently, short-circuiting with a loud crackle. The flow of dark energy faltered for a second, and the Garchomp screamed, clutching its head. But it wasn't enough. The collar sputtered back to life, glowing an even more menacing shade of red. The dark energy surged, stronger than before. Enraged, the Garchomp spun, its scythe arm swinging directly at Ash. Time seemed to slow down. Korrina screamed his name. His Lucario moved to intercept, but it wouldn't be fast enough. Ash stood his ground. He held up a hand, his palm open. His eyes glowed with a faint, blue light. He poured his own aura out, not as an attack, but as a shield. The Garchomp's scythe, a weapon that could slice through solid steel, slammed into the wall of pure energy. It stopped dead, inches from Ash's face. The impact sent a shockwave blasting outwards, kicking up dust and debris. The Garchomp roared in frustration, pushing harder, but it couldn't break through the intangible barrier. It's not your fault, Ash said, his voice calm and steady, speaking to the Pokémon through the shield of aura. Let me help you. He dropped the shield and, in a move of breathtaking audacity, lunged forward. Before the Garchomp could react, he slammed his palm flat against its chest, right over its heart. His other hand landed on the sparking, malevolent collar. Lucario, hold it down. Don't let it move. His Lucario, now Mega evolved in another silent, instantaneous flash of power, grabbed the Garchomp's arms, holding them fast. The dragon struggled, its strength immense, but Mega Lucario's grip was like iron. Ash closed his eyes, his entire focus converging on the points of contact. He wasn't just a trainer anymore. He was an aura guardian, a master of the energy that connected all living things. He pushed his own aura, pure and golden white like the sun, directly into the Garchomp's body. He felt the corruption, the malice, recoil like a living thing. It was cold, hungry, and full of despair. It fought back, trying to poison him, but his aura was a relentless, cleansing fire. He focused a second stream of power into the collar. He didn't try to break it with force. He flowed his aura into its circuitry, overloading it from the inside, seeking out its core function and tearing it apart on a fundamental level. Let Go, he grunted, the strain immense. The dark energy fought him, lashing at his mind with images of fear and pain. But he held fast, his will an unbreakable anchor. His connection to Korrina, a bright spot in his mind even now, fueled him. The promise he had just made to her. The future they would build. He would not fail. With a final, desperate push, he severed the two. The collar exploded. It didn't just break, it shattered into 100 tiny pieces, showering the ground in smoking, inert metal. At the same instant, the foul, purple-black energy around the Garchomp was violently expelled, dissolving into the air like smoke in the wind. The Garchomp went limp. Its mega evolution collapsed, its body shrinking back to its normal size. The mad crimson glow in its eyes faded, replaced by a confused, exhausted blue. It gave a low, weary groan and slumped to the ground, unconscious, its heavy breathing the only sound in the sudden silence. Ash stumbled back, gasping for breath, sweat pouring down his face. The backlash from severing the corrupt energy left him dizzy, his vision swimming. Lucario, its mega form fading, steadied him with a paw on his shoulder. Korrina was at his side in a flash, her skates silent on the pavement. She grabbed his arm, her face a mask of worry and relief. Ash. Are you okay? I'm fine, he panted, giving her a weak but reassuring smile. Just, tired. That thing was nasty. He looked down at the Garchomp, now sleeping peacefully, the frantic pain gone from its features. He had saved it. Korrina followed his gaze, then knelt, her fingers gently brushing over the scattered, broken pieces of the collar. She picked one up. It was cold to the touch, its internal circuitry fused and melted. What was this? She murmured, her thumb tracing the strange, unfamiliar insignia etched into the metal, a stylized, broken flame. Who would do this to a Pokémon? Ash knelt beside her, taking the piece of metal from her hand. He stared at the insignia, a flicker of a dark memory stirring in the back of his mind. Team Flare. But this was different. More advanced. More vicious. Their moment of triumph was gone, replaced by a cold, unsettling dread. They had won the battle, saved the Pokémon, and stopped the destruction. But as they stood there, the ring on Korrina's finger a silent promise of a shared future, and the broken piece of a malicious technology in Ash's hand a warning of a new enemy, they both knew this was not an end. This was a beginning. A declaration of a war they didn't even know they were fighting. Chapter 2, The weight of the keystone. The flashing red and blue lights of Officer Jenny's cruiser painted the scene in strobing, unnatural colors. The air, once thick with the stench of ozone and rage, was now heavy with the smell of salt and damp, cooling stone. The Mega Garchomp, now just a Garchomp, slept a deep and exhausted sleep, its massive form rising and falling with each steady breath. A team of medics was attending to its trainer, a young man no older than Ash, who was just beginning to stir. Ash stood with Korrina, the broken, sharp piece of the collar still cold in his palm. The thrill of victory, the raw adrenaline of the fight, had evaporated, leaving a chilling residue of unease. This wasn't a clean win. It was a messy, disturbing rescue, and the questions it raised were far more frightening than the rampaging Pokémon had been. What happened? The young trainer, whose name was Leo, sat up, clutching his head. His eyes darted around, wide with confusion, before they landed on his Garchomp. A wave of pure horror washed over his face. Garchomp. Is he? He's okay, Ash said, his voice gentle but firm. He walked over and knelt beside the trainer. He's exhausted, but he's safe. Can you tell us what happened, Leo? Leo looked from Ash's reassuring face to Korrina, the famous Shaller gym leader, and his expression crumpled with shame. I don't know. Not really. We were training. He's strong, so strong, but we kept losing in the local tournaments. We couldn't get the sync right for Mega Evolution. I saw an ad online, on a trainer's forum. The Apex collar. It promised to unlock a Pokémon's full potential. Championship-level power, instantly. No bond required. Just, flip a switch. Korrina's face tightened. You bought a piece of unknown technology from the internet and put it on your partner? Her voice was sharp, the guardian of tradition appalled by the reckless shortcut. Leo flinched. I know it was stupid. But I was desperate. I just wanted him to be seen for how amazing he is. His voice cracked. I put it on him, and at first, it was incredible. The power, it felt limitless. He mega evolved without me even having a keystone. But then, he started screaming. And he wouldn't listen. The collar, it wouldn't turn off. I tried to get it off him, but the energy threw me back. It was like it was feeding on his pain. Ash placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. His touch was grounding. It's not your fault. You were tricked. He held up the piece of shattered metal. This wasn't designed to help him. It was designed to use him. To turn him into a weapon. The insidious nature of it settled over them. It wasn't just an attack, it was a temptation. A poison offered as a cure to desperate trainers, preying on their ambition and insecurity. It was a dark mirror of everything Ash and Korrina stood for. We have to take this to my grandfather, Korrina said, her gaze locked with Ash's. The unspoken thought passed between them, their engagement, their future, was now inextricably linked to this new darkness. Officer Jenny approached, holstering her radio. We'll get the trainer and his Garchomp to the Pokémon Center for a full diagnostic. The road will be cleared by morning. But, Ash, Korrina, the Kalos League is already blowing up my line. They want a full report. An unauthorized mega evolution causing this much damage, people are scared. Tell them they'll have it, Korrina promised, her voice taking on the official tone of a gym leader. But first, we have a duty to the tower. As they walked back through the now quiet streets of Shalar, the silver ring on Korrina's finger felt heavier than it had an hour ago. The pure, simple joy of Ash's proposal was now tinged with the gravity of their shared reality. They were leaders, protectors. And the world had just become a much more dangerous place. They found Gherkin not in a public hall or training ground, but in the heart of the tower's library. It was a cavernous, circular room, its walls lined from floor to ceiling with ancient scrolls and heavy, leather-bound books. The air smelled of old paper and history. A massive, ornate globe of the world, crafted from brass and lapis lazuli, stood in the center of the room, and Gherkin was tracing a line across the Hoenn region with a thick finger, his brow furrowed in thought. He looked up as they entered, his gaze immediately falling to the shard of metal in Ash's hand. Let me see it. Ash placed the fragment on a heavy oak table under the light of a desk lamp. Gherkin leaned over it, his keen eyes examining the strange circuitry and the melted sigil of the broken flame. He didn't touch it. Instead, he closed his eyes, his hand hovering inches above it. Ash recognized the technique. The old master was sensing its aura, or the toxic echo of what it once held. After a long moment, Gherkin opened his eyes, and the jovial light was gone, replaced by a deep, stony seriousness. Control, he rumbled, the word dropping into the silence of the library like a stone. This device, its energy signature is one of absolute control. It doesn't ask for power. It rips it out. It severs the consciousness of the Pokémon and hotwires its nervous system. The pain Leo described, it was the Pokémon's soul fighting against its own body. He straightened up, his great height seeming to fill the room. He looked at Ash, then at Korrina, and finally at the ring on her finger. A heavy sigh escaped him. I had hoped, he began, his voice a low thunder, that your union would be one of joy. A celebration of a new generation taking the mantle. But it seems the legacy you are inheriting is not just one of triumph, but of struggle. He walked over to a locked case and produced a key from his robes, unlocking it. He pulled out a thick, ancient scroll, its edges frayed with age, and unrolled it on the table. The parchment was covered in elegant, hand-painted calligraphy and illustrations. One showed a figure wreathed in golden aura, standing with a Lucario. The other showed a shadowy figure, shackling a furious Pokémon with chains of purple light. The history of Mega Evolution is not just the story of the bond, Gherkin said, his finger tracing the image of the shadowed figure. It is also the story of those who sought to profane it. Ancient warlords, twisted sorcerers, they saw the bond not as a source of strength, but as a weakness. An emotional variable. They tried for centuries to create power without it. Power born of dominance. Of control. We believed their arts were lost to time. He looked at the metal shard. It seems someone has reinvented them, with technology as their medium instead of dark magic. He then fixed his gaze on Ash, and it was as intense as any he had ever given him in battle. Ash. You are perhaps the most powerful aura user of this generation. Your ability to connect with your Pokémon, to Mega Evolve Lucario with naught but a look, it is a power that legends are made of. It is a beacon. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. And beacons attract all manner of things from the darkness. Moths, certainly. But also monsters. He turned to Korrina. My granddaughter is the successor. Her life is sworn to protecting these secrets, to upholding the sanctity of the bond. The man who stands by her side, who wears the title of her husband, does not simply join our family. He becomes a guardian of this tower. A shield for its legacy. The air grew thick with unspoken meaning. This was more than a grandfather's blessing. It was a warning. A challenge. Your power is a magnificent gift, Ash, Gherkin continued, his voice softening slightly. But power, even power born of light, can be a dangerous thing. It can breed pride. It can blind its wielder. And it can be a target for those who wish to seize it or snuff it out. Before I can give my blessing to this union, before you can take on the true weight of that keystone on her finger, I must be certain. Not of your strength, of that, there is no doubt. I must be certain of your heart. Ash met the old man's gaze without flinching. His own expression was resolute, his decision already made. I understand, he said, his voice clear and steady. I love Korrina. I would do anything to stand by her side. If this is what it takes, not just to be her husband, but to be her partner in all things, then tell me what I have to do. A flicker of pride shone in Gherkin's eyes. He rolled up the ancient scroll and returned it to its case. There is a place, deep beneath the foundation of this tower. We call it the Chamber of Echoes. It is not a physical place, not truly. It is a crucible of spirit. Every past master and successor who has trained here, who has poured their aura into these stones, has left an imprint of themselves behind. Their joys, their sorrows, their triumphs, and their failures. The chamber is where these psychic impressions are strongest. He locked the case and turned back to them. Aura is resonance. The chamber will resonate with you. It will show you things. Test you. You will not face a Pokémon, Ash. You will face the ghosts of our past. And they, in turn, will look into your soul. You must go there, alone, and journey to its heart. You must prove to them, and to yourself, that your heart is worthy of the power you wield and the legacy you wish to join. I'll do it, Ash said, without a moment's hesitation. While Ash prepared for his trial, Korrina found herself in a different kind of battle. She stood in her personal office, a modern, functional room high in the tower, the panoramic window behind her displaying the tranquil sea. The peaceful view was a stark contrast to the tense voice coming from the large monitor on her wall. And while Champion Diantha has expressed her full confidence in your handling of the situation, the crisp, bureaucratic voice of a Kalos League official droned on, the fact remains that a section of public highway was destroyed, and the incident involved an unregulated mega evolution. The media is having a field day, Korrina. They're spinning narratives of superpowered trainers running amok. We need to control the message. The message, Korrina retorted, her hands clenched at her sides, is that a Pokemon was being tortured by a malicious device, and we saved it. Ash put himself in harm's way to prevent a catastrophe. Of course, and we commend his bravery. But the energy signatures detected, they were off the charts. His, and the Garchomp's. It makes people nervous. It makes the other regional leagues nervous. Power like that, unregulated, is a political liability. Korrina took a deep breath, forcing her frustration down. This was her new reality. It wasn't just about winning battles anymore. It was about winning hearts and minds, about navigating the treacherous waters of politics and public perception. I will be issuing a formal statement. We are investigating the origins of the device. We will find who is responsible. You have my word as the Shaller successor. The call ended, leaving Korrina staring at her own tense reflection in the blank screen. She ran a hand through her hair, a sigh escaping her. She felt a buzz from the tablet on her desk. A video call request. It was from a familiar, smiling face, framed by a shock of blonde hair and a diadem peeking over her shoulder. Korrina. Bonnie's voice chirped, full of youthful energy. Clement and I heard what happened. Are you guys okay? Was it a super scary Pokemon? Did Ash have to punch it? A genuine smile touched Korrina's lips for the first time in hours. Hi, Bonnie. Yeah, we're okay. And no, Ash did not punch it. Ah, Bonnie pouted. Well, Clement is analyzing the energy readings that got leaked to the press. He says the chaotic waveform is similar to some of Team Flare's failed experiments, but way more angry. That's the word he used. Angry energy. He's geeking out. The mention of Team Flare sent another chill down Korrina's spine. It fit. The broken flame insignia. The obsession with harnessing Pokemon power. But this felt different. More personal. More cruel. Listen, Bonnie, I have to go, Korrina said. Tell Clement thanks. And, tell him to be careful. She ended the call just as Ash walked in. He had changed from his battle-worn clothes into a simple black t-shirt and gray pants, attire suitable for meditation and movement. He looked calm, but she could see the focused intensity in his eyes. Ready to go talk to some ghosts? She asked, her attempt at levity falling a little flat. He came over and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a hug. She leaned against his chest, closing her eyes, drawing strength from his steady presence. I'm ready, he said, his voice a low murmur in her ear. Are you okay? You look stressed. Just league politics, she mumbled into his shirt. They're worried about you. About your power. Let them worry, he said simply. He pulled back, his hands on her shoulders, and looked her in the eye. My power is for protecting the people and Pokemon I care about. It's for protecting you. That's all they need to know. She reached up and touched the side of his face. Be careful down there, Ash. Grandfather said it's not a physical test. I don't know what that means, but I don't like it. He gave her a confident smile, the one that had always managed to dispel her fears. Always. You handle the world, I'll handle the ghosts. He leaned in and gave her a quick, firm kiss. I'll be back before you know it. With that, he turned and left, Pikachu trotting faithfully at his heels, leaving Korrina alone with the setting sun and the weight of the world on her shoulders. The descent was a journey through time. The polished stone steps of the upper tower soon gave way to rough-hewn rock, the air growing cooler, heavier. The only light came from the faint, golden aura that Ash let emanate from his hand, illuminating the path ahead. Pikachu stayed close, his own electric sacs crackling softly, a familiar comfort in the oppressive silence. Gherkin had led him to a simple iron door, set into the rock at the lowest level of the tower's foundation, and then had left him with a solemn nod. The chamber will know when you are finished. The door will only open from the inside. Beyond the door, there was no path. Just a vast, dark space. But Ash could feel it. The air was not empty, it was thick with latent energy, a sea of dormant aura. It was like standing in a room crowded with sleeping people. He took a breath and stepped into the blackness. At first, there was nothing but the sound of his own footsteps and Pikachu's soft padding. Then, the whispers began. They were not sounds, but feelings that brushed against his mind. Focus, the strike must be true, a feeling of intense discipline. We won, the city is safe, a wave of overwhelming relief and joy. I failed him, my partner, gone, a pang of sharp, soul-crushing grief. These were the echoes. Fragments of powerful emotions, imprinted on this place over centuries. Ash didn't fight them. He let them wash over him, acknowledging them like memories in a dream, and then let them pass. He was the intruder here, he had to show respect. His own aura was a steady, calm beacon, a silent announcement of his purpose. He was not here to disturb them, only to pass through. He walked for what felt like miles, deeper into the psychic gloom. The echoes grew stronger, more defined. He saw fleeting images in the corner of his eye, a flash of a Mega Metacam in a graceful dance, the silhouette of a trainer weeping over a fallen Pokémon, a master laughing with his partner. He was walking through history. Then he felt it. A cold spot. The gentle whispers of the past turned sharp, malicious. The air grew frigid. The oppressive silence was replaced by a high-pitched, mental static. It was an energy that did not belong here. It was the residue of the collar, a stain left on his own aura that was now reacting to the psychic amplification of the chamber. He stumbled, a wave of dizziness hitting him. Pikachu let out a startled Pika. The darkness in front of him swirled, coalesced. It was not an echo. It was a vision. He saw a void, a vast, starless expanse of absolute nothingness. It was a hunger so profound it had a physical presence, a vacuum that threatened to pull his very consciousness apart. A voice, not of sound but of pure, negative emotion, slithered into his mind. Stolen, light. The feeling was one of cosmic theft, of something precious being taken. Stolen, power. A sense of gnawing, endless jealousy. Give. It. Back. The mental command was a physical blow. Ash cried out, staggering back, his hand flying to his head. The vision intensified, he saw bonds of light between trainers and Pokémon, beautiful and radiant, and then he saw them being consumed by the void, twisted into screaming tendrils of black despair. He saw Mega Evolution not as a beautiful miracle, but as a bleeding wound from which the void's own lifeblood was escaping. He was falling, tumbling into the abyss of absolute hopelessness. Pikachu. A sharp, controlled jolt of electricity surged up his arm from his shoulder. It wasn't enough to hurt, but it was a violent, grounding shock. The vision shattered. The voice recoiled. Ash fell to one knee, panting, his heart hammering against his ribs. The cold spot remained, but the oppressive presence had receded. "Thanks, buddy," he gasped, reaching up to scratch a grateful Pikachu behind the ears. The little Pokémon nuzzled against his neck, chittering with worry. That thing, the malice, as his mind instinctively labeled it, it wasn't just an enemy. It was an antithesis. It hated the very concept of the bond. And the collar, the hyper-evolution, as Zeros had called it, was its tool. A hook cast into their world. Shaken but more determined than ever, Ash pushed himself to his feet. He knew now what was at stake. This wasn't just about protecting a legacy. It was about defending the very essence of what it meant to be a trainer. He pressed on, and finally, he saw it. A faint blue light in the distance. The heart of the chamber. He entered a vast, circular cavern, the walls of which pulsed with a soft, ethereal glow. In the center of the cavern, a figure shimmered into existence. It was an echo, but unlike the fleeting fragments he had encountered before, this one was whole, solid. It was an armored man, his armor ancient and ornate, his form cast in spectral blue light. He stood with his back to Ash, his shoulders slumped. A palpable aura of grief and rage rolled off him in waves, so powerful it felt like a physical force. Ash felt his own Lucario stir within its poke ball, sensing the hostile energy. Ash placed a calming hand on the ball. This was not a fight for Lucario. The spectral figure turned. Its face was a mask of ancient sorrow, its eyes burning with a cold fire. Another one, the echo's voice resonated not in Ash's ears, but directly in his soul. Another child who comes seeking power, wielding the bond as if it were a toy. I'm not here for power, Ash stated, his voice calm. I am here to prove myself worthy. The spirit let out a humorless, echoing laugh. Worthy? Worthy of what? The pain? The loss? I was a guardian. One of the first. My bond with my partner was said to be the strongest of our time. We were invincible. The air in the cavern grew colder, the light from the walls dimming. The spirit's form flickered with rage. And for what? He fell in a battle to protect those who would have fled. He gave his life, and my invincible bond did nothing but show me his pain in perfect, agonizing detail as he died. The bond is not a gift. It is a chain that binds you to suffering. It is a vulnerability that your enemies will exploit. Your power, your connection, it will bring you nothing but ruin. You will lose everything you love, just as I did. A psychic storm erupted in the chamber. The spectral guardian raised a hand, and the grief and rage coalesced into a blade of pure, negative energy. He was preparing to strike. This was the final test. Not just a hostile spirit, but one with an ideology that cut to the very heart of Ash's beliefs. Pikachu's cheeks sparked, ready to defend his trainer. But Ash held up a hand. It's okay, Pikachu. He didn't raise a shield. He didn't prepare an aura sphere. He did the last thing the spirit expected. He lowered his defenses completely. He opened his own aura, not as a weapon, but as an invitation. He let the spirit storm of pain wash over him, and he did not flinch. I understand, Ash projected, his thoughts a clear, steady stream of pure empathy. He didn't speak the words, he let the spirit feel them. He reached into his own memories, into the moments of his deepest loss. He projected the image of leaving his butter free, the bittersweet ache of letting it go to be with its own kind. He shared the hollow feeling of watching Pidgeot fly off to protect its flock, a promise to return still hanging in the air. He relived the painful, necessary farewell to Greninja, leaving his powerful partner to protect Kalos from the lingering shadows of Team Flare's mess. He projected the love he felt for them. The pride. And the sharp, undeniable pain of their absence. He didn't offer pity. He offered solidarity. The bond doesn't end, Ash's aura whispered into the storm. It changes. The pain doesn't mean it was a mistake. The pain is the proof of the love. It's the price we pay for not being alone. The spectral guardian's energy blade wavered. The psychic storm began to quiet. He was seeing Ash's soul, laid bare. Not a child seeking power, but a man who had loved, lost, and continued to love anyway. A man who understood that true strength wasn't the absence of vulnerability, but the courage to embrace it. You have known loss. The spirit's voice was softer now, the rage replaced by a weary, centuries-old sorrow. Yes, Ash projected. And I would not trade a single moment, even the painful ones. Because of them, I am who I am. Because of them, my bond with my partners now is even stronger. He projected his feelings for Pikachu, a bond of pure, unconditional friendship that had spanned his entire journey. He shared his perfect, silent sync with Lucario, a partnership of warriors. And finally, he shared his love for Korrina, a connection that was both a roaring fire and a steady anchor. This was the strength he drew from. The Guardian's energy blade dissolved into motes of blue light. The spectral armor faded, revealing the simple form of a man. The rage in his eyes was gone, replaced by a profound, tearful acceptance. "Perhaps, you are right," the echo whispered. "Perhaps the love was worth the pain." The figure gave Ash a slow, solemn nod of respect. "The legacy is in worthy hands. Guardian." With that final word, the echo faded, dissolving into the pulsing light of the walls. The cavern became bright and warm again, filled with a sense of profound peace. The test was over. The iron door at the entrance to the chamber glowed, and Ash heard the distinct sound of its lock turning. He took a deep breath, the sheer emotional and spiritual exhaustion hitting him all at once. He had faced the ghosts of the past and had not been found wanting. When Ash emerged from the iron door, blinking in the soft light of the tower's basement, Gherkin and Korrina were waiting. Korrina rushed to him immediately, her worried eyes scanning his face. "Ash. Are you all right?" He gave her a tired but genuine smile and pulled her into a hug, burying his face in her hair. "I'm fine. Just, a lot to process." Gherkin watched them, a knowing look on his face. He could feel it. The very atmosphere of the tower felt lighter, calmer. The ancient, grieving echo that had long been a source of turmoil in the chamber's heart was finally at peace. "You have done well, Ash," Gherkin said, his voice filled with a deep, resonant pride. "More than well. You have not just passed the trial. You have healed a wound this tower has carried for centuries." He placed a heavy hand on Ash's shoulder. "You have not just earned the right to marry my granddaughter. You have earned your place as a guardian of this tower. The weight of this keystone," he nodded towards the ring on Korrina's finger, "is now yours to share. My blessing is yours, completely and without reservation." Later, after Ash had explained what he had seen, the vision of the malice, the nature of the guardian's grief, they stood together in the main hall. The decision was made. They would counter the fear-mongering and the political pressure with a message of their own. A formal announcement was sent to the Kalos News Network. That evening, they stood with Clement and Bonnie, who had driven down from Lumios the moment they heard Ash was safe. Watching the large screen in the hall. A well-dressed news anchor was on screen, a picture of Ash and Korrina from a past tournament displayed over her shoulder. "In a story that is bringing a much-needed ray of light to the Kalos region," the anchor said, her voice bright, "we have received a formal announcement from the Tower of Mastery. Shalar City Gym leader and Mega Evolution successor, Korrina, is officially engaged to be married to the world-renowned trainer, Ash Ketchum of Pallet Town." Bonnie let out a squeal of delight, hugging Korrina's leg. "I knew it. I knew it. You have to let me be the flower girl." Clement pushed his glasses up his nose, a wide, happy smile on his face. "This is wonderful news. Congratulations to you both." Ash wrapped his arm around Korrina's waist, pulling her close. For a brief, shining moment, the darkness was forgotten. There was only the warmth of their friends, the joy of their announcement, and the promise of their future. The anchor's pleasant expression suddenly turned serious. "We are interrupting this broadcast for a breaking news alert." The screen behind her switched to a shaky, live video feed. The Chirin at the bottom read, "Fortree City, Hoenn Region, live." The image was of a city built among the treetops, battered by gale-force winds under a bruised, stormy sky. And in the center of the storm was a mega salamence. It was wreathed in the exact same, sickeningly familiar purple-black energy as the Garchomp had been. Its movements were not the graceful flight of a dragon, but the wild, agonized thrashing of a creature in torment. It was roaring, a sound of pure pain, as it tore through the canopy, ripping homes from their foundations. The joy in the hall vanished, replaced by a stunned, horrified silence. Clement's face went pale. "That energy, it's identical." Korrina stared at the screen, her hand flying to her mouth. Ash's arm tightened around her, his expression hardening into a mask of cold fury. The reporter's panicked voice could be heard over the roar of the wind and the dragon. The situation is escalating rapidly. The Hoenn League is attempting to intervene, but the Pokémon is completely unresponsive. It's like something out of a nightmare. The brief moment of peace was shattered. The celebration was over. Their engagement, their future, their fight, it was all one and the same now. This wasn't a Kalos problem anymore. Their enemy wasn't just a shadow in their city. It was a plague, spreading across the world. Chapter 3, The Ghost in the Machine. The live feed from Fortree City was a window into a waking nightmare. The corrupted Mega Salamence, a beautiful creature twisted into a marionette of agony, tore through the treetop metropolis with mindless ferocity. The world watched, horrified, as the Hoenn League's attempts to contain it were met with overwhelming, chaotic power. Then, a figure of unmistakable elegance and strength entered the fray. Steven Stone, the Hoenn champion, arrived on his own Mega Metagross. The battle that followed was not a contest of equals. It was a mercy mission. Steven didn't match the Salamence's raw, destructive power. Instead, his Metagross, a thinking fortress of chrome and psychic might, moved with chilling precision. It created barriers of light to protect fleeing civilians, used meteor mash to destroy falling debris before it could hit the homes below, and methodically dismantled the Salamence's attacks, forcing it into a corner. The battle ended when Mega Metagross pinned the rampaging dragon with its immense psychic grip, allowing Steven to leap from its back and, with his own hands, rip the sparking, malevolent collar from the Salamence's neck. The creature collapsed, the dark energy dissipating just as it had with the Garchomp. The broadcast ended with a close-up of Steven Stone's face. He was normally the picture of cool, collected grace, but now, his expression was thunderous. He held the shattered remnants of the collar up to the camera, his voice ringing with cold fury. "Whoever is responsible for this atrocity," he declared, his voice carrying across the global networks, "know this, you have made an enemy of the Hoenn region. And you have made an enemy of me. We will find you." In the hall of the Tower of Mastery, the silence was heavy enough to suffocate. Bonnie had her face buried in Clement's side, frightened by the sheer violence she'd witnessed. Clement himself was staring at the blank screen, his mind already racing, piecing together the terrifying implications. Ash felt Korrina tremble beside him. He looked down at her. Her face was pale, her knuckles white where she gripped the back of a chair. "Two," she whispered. "Two in as many days. How many more are out there? How many more trainers are falling for this?" The question hung in the air, unanswered and terrifying. This was a coordinated, insidious attack, spreading like a virus. The thought was broken by the sharp, familiar chime of a video call. The main screen lit up, displaying Professor Augustine Sycamore's face. He wasn't in his usual pristine lab coat, he wore a travel jacket, and the background behind him was a blur of motion. He was in a car, speeding through the night. His normally cheerful, handsome face was etched with grim urgency. "Ash. Korrina. I saw the broadcast," he said, foregoing any pleasantries. "I'm on my way to Shaller. I should be there within the hour." "Professor? What is it?" Ash asked, stepping closer to the screen. "It's about that collar," Sycamore said, his eyes dark. "Clement, I'm patching you in." A second window opened, showing Clement back in his own lab in Lumiose Tower, surrounded by holographic schematics. "I've been analyzing the energy signature from the Fortree incident," Clement began, adjusting his glasses. "The waveform degradation, the parasitic energy drain, it's a bastardized, weaponized version of the research I was forced to do for Team Flare." He grimaced at the memory. "But this is far more advanced. The power source is something I don't recognize. It's not drawing from an external generator. It seems to be forcing the Pokémon to consume its own life force, converting it into this berserk energy. It's a self-destruct mechanism disguised as a power-up." Sycamore nodded grimly. "That's not all. The fragment of the collar you recovered from the Garchomp, Ash. Officer Jenny sent me the high-resolution photos. I've been cross-referencing the insignia, the circuitry design, with every database I have access to. He paused, his expression hardening. It's a match. To a project file I was never meant to see. A file that belonged to one of my former colleagues, a man who disappeared after Lyssandra's defeat. A cold dread settled in Ash's stomach. He knew who the professor was talking about. Zeros, Ash said, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. The very same, Sycamore confirmed. Team Flare's head scientist. The man who orchestrated the capture of Zygarde, the mastermind behind the ultimate weapon. We thought he perished in the blast at the Flare base. Clearly, we were wrong. Zeros. The fanatical, cold-eyed man in the bizarre red goggles. He hadn't just been a follower of Lysandra, he had been a true believer in the beautiful world rhetoric, a zealot who saw sentiment and emotion as flaws to be purged. So he's back, Korrina said, her voice steely. And he's upgraded his tactics from giant robots to these, torture devices. It appears so, Clement added, his face grim. And if it is Zeros, then he's likely operating out of one of Team Flare's old hidden facilities. There were dozens of them scattered across Kalos, many of them still unaccounted for. That's why I'm coming to you, Sycamore said, his gaze fixed on Ash. Zeros was obsessed with harnessing Pokemon energy. Your aura, Ash, the power you displayed with the Garchomp, it's the ultimate expression of that energy, but in its purest form. You are the living antithesis of his philosophy. He won't just see you as an obstacle. He'll see you as a prize. A puzzle to be solved and exploited. The implication was clear. This wasn't just a global threat. It was personal. Ash was a target. Good, Ash said, and the single word was so full of cold, quiet fury that everyone in the room fell silent. Let him come. It'll save me the trouble of finding him. Professor Sycamore arrived as the first hint of dawn was breaking, his car skidding to a halt outside the tower. He looked exhausted from the all-night drive, but his eyes were sharp with purpose. They convened in the library, the great brass globe now seeming to represent a world under siege. Clement was still patched in on the big screen, a pot of coffee visible on his desk behind him. All right, Clement said, pulling up a holographic map of the Kalos region dotted with red markers. These are the known locations of former Team Flare bases. Most have been decommissioned by the League, but several are in remote areas, difficult to access. We need to narrow it down. Zeros is a scientist, but he's also an egomaniac, Sycamore mused, pacing in front of the map. He wouldn't hide in some forgotten supply depot. He'd want a facility with significant power infrastructure, advanced research capabilities. And privacy. Ash stared at the map, but he wasn't looking at the red dots. He was trying to think like his enemy. Where would a man obsessed with twisted power go? Not a place of nature. A place of artifice. A place of cold, hard steel. His eyes drifted to the largest city on the map, the heart of Kalos. Lumio City, Ash said. Clement looked up, surprised. Here. But the city's been swept a dozen times. Prism Tower itself was his base of operations. Not in the city, Ash clarified, his finger tracing the sprawling outskirts. Under it. Team Flare had access to the city's power grid. There have to be substations, access tunnels, maintenance hubs, places no one would think to look twice at. An old, abandoned power plant on the edge of the city would be perfect. Sycamore's eyes lit up. He's right. The old Lumios power station near Route 13. It was decommissioned decades ago, but the primary geothermal taps it sits on are still active. It would have all the raw energy Zeros could ever need, and it's been erased from most modern maps. It's the perfect ghost in the machine. The plan came together with terrifying speed. There was no time to wait for League bureaucracy. They had to move now, before Zeros could distribute more collars or refine his horrifying technology. Clement, you're our eyes and ears, Korrina said, taking charge. Get us the original schematics for that power plant. We need to know what we're walking into. Professor, you stay here with my grandfather. Coordinate with Stephen Stone and the other champions. Let them know what we've found. This needs to be a global effort. And you too? Sycamore asked, though he already knew the answer. We're going hunting, Ash said, his expression grim. Pikachu leaped onto his shoulder, his cheeks sparking with determination. The journey to Lumio City was a blur. They didn't take public transport. Ash's Charizard, a powerhouse of muscle and flame, carried them through the sky, soaring high above the clouds. The wind whipped past them, cold and sharp, a match for the icy resolve in their hearts. Korrina held on tight to Ash, her helmet shielding her from the wind, her own Lucario in its pokeball, ready for the fight to come. They were a single, unified force, a spear tip aimed at the heart of the enemy. They landed in the desolate, wind-swept badlands of Route 13, a place of stark, rocky beauty. The hulking, skeletal remains of the old power plant stood silhouetted against the morning sun, a rusted metal carcass in the middle of the desert. It looked dead, abandoned. But Ash could feel it. A faint, wrong thrum of energy in the air. A cold, synthetic aura that made the hairs on his arms stand up. He's here, Ash said, his voice low. Clement's voice crackled through the comm device in Korrina's helmet. Okay, I have the schematics. It's a maze in there, but there's a primary control room in the central geothermal core. If Zeros is anywhere, he'll be there. I'm uploading the layout to your Pokéches now. Got it, Korrina confirmed, her own eyes scanning the derelict structure. Let's go. Quietly. They moved with the silence of practiced predators, slipping through a collapsed wall into the plant's cavernous main turbine hall. The place was a graveyard of forgotten technology. Giant, rusted turbines stood like sleeping iron giants, covered in dust and grime. The air was stale and smelled of rust and ozone. But there were signs of life. Fresh footprints in the dust. A discarded power cable, far too new for this place. A low, almost subsonic hum that resonated through the soles of their boots. They followed the hum, descending deeper into the plant's metallic guts. The layout Clement had sent them was invaluable, allowing them to navigate the labyrinthine corridors and avoid the dead ends. The hum grew louder, the air growing warmer as they approached the geothermal core. They reached a heavy blast door, slightly ajar. The hum was coming from beyond it. Ash and Korrina exchanged a look, and with a silent nod, they drew their pokeballs. Ash's Lucario and Korrina's Lucario materialized beside them in twin flashes of light, their senses immediately on high alert. Ash held up a hand, signaling a halt. He peeked through the crack in the door. The room beyond was a stark contrast to the decay outside. It was a state-of-the-art laboratory, bright and sterile, carved out of the heart of the old plant. Wires and conduits snaked from the walls, all leading to a massive geothermal drill that plunged deep into the earth, drawing up immense, shimmering heat. Banks of supercomputers hummed, their screens filled with cascading lines of code and complex energy readings. And in the center of it all, suspended in a containment field, was a Pokémon. A Metagross. It was thrashing weakly, a more advanced, sleeker version of the Apex collar clamped around its head. Wires ran from the collar to the computers, draining its energy, its very life force, and converting it into raw data. And standing before the console, his back to them, was a man in a pristine white lab coat and familiar, absurdly large red goggles. Zeros. He was monologuing to himself, his voice a cold, passionless drone. Fascinating. The emotional resistance from the subject creates quantifiable energy spikes. Lysandra was a fool to try and co-opt the bond. It is so much more efficient to simply excise it. Power, pure and absolute, without the messy variable of affection. Korrina's hands clenched into fists. The casual cruelty, the clinical detachment, it was monstrous. Zeros typed a command into his console. The energy drain on the Metagross intensified. It let out a pained, psychic cry. That echoed in their minds. Subject's neural functions are degrading. A pity. But the data is invaluable. The next generation of callers will be flawless. A world of perfect, obedient power awaits. That was enough. Ash didn't need a signal. He kicked the door. The blast door flew off its hinges with a deafening shriek of tearing metal and slammed into the far wall. Ash, Korrina, and their two Lucario strode into the room, a tableau of righteous fury. Zeros spun around, his expression not of panic, but of mild, academic surprise. His gaze swept over Korrina, then settled on Ash. A slow, thin smile spread across his lips. "Ah," he said, as if greeting an expected guest. "Ash Ketchum. And the Shaller successor. The living embodiment of the power of bonds. I should have known you'd be drawn to my work. You are the ultimate outlier in my dataset. The ultimate anomaly. Let that Metagross go, Zeros." Ash's voice was dangerously quiet. Zeros chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "Let it go. My dear boy, it is contributing to the greatest breakthrough in Pokémon history. I am liberating Pokémon from the shackles of emotional servitude. I am offering them true power. The power of a god, with me as their benevolent guide. You're torturing them." Korrina snarled, her Lucario stepping forward, a bone rush staff already materializing in its paw. "Semantics," Zeros waved a dismissive hand. "Progress requires sacrifice." He pressed a large red button on his console. Alarms blared. Heavy metal shutters slammed down over the doors and windows, sealing them in. At the same time, two large containment pods on either side of the room hissed open. From one emerged a massive sizer, its claws gleaming like surgical steel. From the other, a Tyranitar, its rocky hide scarred and pitted. Around both of their necks were the sleek, new versions of the Apex collars. Their eyes glowed with the same feral, pain-filled crimson light as the Garchomp and Salamence. "You see," Zero said, his voice dripping with condescending pride. "My prototypes. Their fighting spirit is completely subjugated to my will. No bond required. Just pure, unadulterated command. Let us test your sentimental theories against the hard logic of science." With a tap on the tablet on his wrist, he sent a command. The Mega Sizer and Mega Tyranitar were instantly enveloped in the violent, purple-black energy of forced Mega Evolution. Their forms twisted and warped into their Mega states, their roars of agony echoing off the walls of the sealed lab. "Go," Zeros commanded simply. "Erase the anomaly." The battle erupted in a storm of motion and violence. This wasn't a sporting match. It was a clash of ideologies fought with claws, steel, and aura. Lucario, close in on Sizer. "Use Bone Rush." Korrina commanded, her mind already assessing the battlefield. Her Mega Lucario, evolving in a brilliant flash, shot forward, a blue blur against the sterile white of the lab. Ash's focus was absolute. He and his own Lucario moved as one, the silent, instantaneous Mega Evolution enveloping his partner as it charged the rampaging Mega Tyranitar. It was immediately, terrifyingly clear how different this was. Korrina's Mega Lucario was a master of technique, its Bone Rush a whirlwind of precise, powerful strikes. But the Mega Sizer felt no pain. It simply absorbed the blows, its own metal claws flashing in a vicious counterattack, driven only by the cold commands from Zeros' tablet. It fought like a machine, brutally efficient and utterly without soul. Ash's Mega Lucario faced a different problem. The Mega Tyranitar was a walking natural disaster, its Stone Edge attack tearing up the metal floor of the lab, its dark pulse sending waves of negative energy blasting through the room. Ash's Lucario flowed around the attacks, a phantom of blue and black, countering with aura spheres that exploded against the Tyranitar's thick hide, staggering it but not stopping it. Their movements are erratic. Clement's voice yelled over the comms, the sounds of battle clearly audible on his end. The Callers are pushing their bodies past their physical limits. They're fighting on pure, agonizing adrenaline. Zeros watched the chaos with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a chemical reaction. Fascinating. Your bond grants you superior coordination, I'll admit. But my subjects have no need for coordination. They have overwhelming power. Tyranitar, Sandstorm. Sizer, Bullet Punch. The Mega Tyranitar roared, and a furious, blinding sandstorm erupted within the sealed lab, visibility dropping to near zero. Through the swirling grit, the Mega Sizer became a red phantom, its bullet punch attack moving faster than the eye could see, slamming into Korrina's Lucario and sending it skidding back. We can't see them. Korrina yelled, shielding her eyes. We don't need to, Ash's voice cut through the storm, calm and centered. He closed his eyes. The swirling sand, the screaming metal, the roaring monsters, it all faded away. He saw the world as it truly was, a tapestry of aura. He saw Korrina's and his Lucario's auras, bright golden flames. He saw the two enemy megas, their own brilliant life auras being strangled by the parasitic, black hole signature of the callers. He saw Zeros, a cold, empty void of a man. And he saw the panicked, terrified flicker of the Metagross in its containment field. He opened his eyes, and they glowed with a faint, blue light. He was no longer just a trainer. He was the conductor of this orchestra of battle. Korrina, left. 3 steps. Power-up punch, now, he called out. Trusting him completely, Korrina relayed the command. Her Mega Lucario, blind in the storm, took 3 precise steps to its left and threw a punch into the empty air. A split second later, the Mega Sizer, moving in for another attack, ran directly into the glowing fist. The super-effective blow sent it flying, crashing into a bank of computers with a shower of sparks. Lucario, above you. Ash commanded his own partner. His Mega Lucario, without hesitation, launched a perfect aura sphere straight up into the swirling sand. It collided with the descending Mega Tyranitar, which had used the sandstorm as cover to leap for an attack from above. The explosion sent the colossal Pokémon crashing to the floor, shaking the entire room. The sandstorm began to die down. Through the thinning haze, Zero stared, his thin smile finally gone, replaced by a look of utter disbelief. Ash hadn't been guessing. He had been seeing. Impossible, Zeros breathed. Your senses, they're not merely human. The bond isn't a weakness, Zeros, Ash said, his voice echoing in the damaged lab. It's the ultimate weapon. It lets us see what you can't. It lets us feel what you'll never understand. Enraged, Zeros slammed his hand down on his console. Unacceptable. If I cannot control the anomaly, I will destroy it. Subject Metagross, initiate protocol, purge. The containment field around the Metagross dropped. The collar around its head glowed a blinding, furious red. Its eyes went completely white and it let out a final, soul-shattering psychic scream as its own body began to glow with self-destructive energy. It was preparing to explode, a living bomb of psychic and steel. He's going to blow up the whole plant. Korrina yelled, her eyes wide with horror. There was no time to escape. No time to reason. Ash acted. Pikachu, let's go, he yelled. He raised his hand, not to Pikachu, but to the glowing Metagross. His keystone flared with brilliant light. He poured his aura out, not to his own Pokémon, but across the room, forcing a connection, a desperate, makeshift bond with the tortured Metagross. Pikachu. Pikachu leaped into the air, and unleashed a torrent of electricity unlike anything he had ever produced before. It wasn't just lightning. It was lightning infused with Ash's own aura, a golden-white river of pure, positive energy. It struck the Metagross not as an attack, but as a transfusion. The violent, self-destructive red light around the Metagross flickered. The golden-white energy from Ash and Pikachu washed over it, fighting the collar's command, soothing the pain, reminding its fried nervous system of what it was to be a Pokémon, not a weapon. The red light receded, overwhelmed by the golden tide. The overload stopped. The Metagross slumped to the ground, unconscious, the collar around its head finally shorting out with a pathetic fizzle. Zeros stared, his mouth agape, his scientific world shattered. Ash hadn't just defeated his puppets. He had hacked his system with the one variable he could never account for, empathy. Seeing his ultimate plan foiled, Zeros' disbelief curdled into pure, panicked rage. He snarled and slammed his fist down on a hidden panel on his console. Self-destruct sequence initiated, a cold, computerized voice announced. Detonation in 30 seconds. A countdown appeared on the main screen. Zeros turned and ran for a hidden escape panel in the wall. This is not over, Ketchum. The world will be made beautiful. My work will continue. Get the Metagross. Ash yelled to Korrina. He and his Lucario were already moving, charging after Zeros. The escape panel slid open, revealing a dark tunnel. Zeros leaped through it just as Mega Lucario's metal claw slammed into the door, which slid shut, sealing him off. The door was a foot of solid titanium. Unbreakable. Zeros' mocking laughter echoed from the other side. Farewell, fools. Korrina and her Lucario were already lifting the unconscious Metagross, preparing to recall their partners and make a run for it. But Ash stood before the sealed door, his face a mask of cold concentration. 15 seconds, Clement's panicked voice shouted over the comms. Ash wasn't listening. He placed his palm flat against the cold titanium door. He closed his eyes. His own aura, his Lucario's, Pikachu's, he drew it all in, focusing it to a single, infinitely small point under his palm. It was the technique the ancient Aura Guardians had used to phase through solid matter, a technique he had only ever read about. He had never tried it. 10 seconds. The air around Ash's hand began to distort, shimmering like a heat haze. The metal of the door began to glow a dull red. Ash, what are you doing? We have to go. Korrina screamed. 5. 4. With a final, silent command to his own soul, Ash pushed. There was no explosion. No sound. His hand simply passed through the door. His body followed, phasing through a foot of solid titanium as if it were smoke. He emerged on the other side, in the dark escape tunnel, just as Zeros was about to climb into a small, one-man sub poised in an underground river. The countdown on the other side of the door hit 0. A series of muffled, concussive blasts rocked the facility. The lights in the tunnel flickered and died. Zeros spun around, his eyes wide with utter shock and terror behind his goggles as Ash stepped out of the solid wall. He looked like a ghost. A vengeful spirit. How? Zeros stammered. Ash didn't answer. He simply walked forward, his eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Zeros fumbled for a weapon, a pokeball, anything. He found nothing. My anomaly. Ash said, his voice a low, dangerous whisper as he backed the terrified scientist against the wall of the tunnel. Is going to have a little chat with the international police. Zeros stared into the glowing eyes of the boy who had broken every law of science he held dear, and for the first time in his life, he felt the cold, primal grip of genuine fear. He had tried to erase emotion from the world, and now he was being consumed by it. Chapter 4, The Aegis Protocol. The aftermath of the power plant's destruction was a controlled chaos. Korrina, having recalled her Lucario and the rescued Metagross, had blasted her way out through a weakened section of the turbine hall wall just as the self-destruct charges detonated. The explosions were muffled, contained deep underground, but the entire facility had groaned like a dying beast, venting steam and smoke from a dozen new fissures in its rusted hide. She'd met Ash at the predetermined rally point, a windswept mesa overlooking the smoldering ruins. He had Zeros with him, unconscious and bound securely with a length of thick power cable. The arrival of the international police, alerted by Professor Sycamore, was swift and professional. An unmarked black helicopter descended from the sky, deploying a team of grim-faced agents in tactical gear. The lead agent, a man with a scarred face and weary eyes, took one look at the dazed and sputtering Zeros and then at Ash, who stood with Pikachu on his shoulder, his clothes torn and covered in soot. "Ash Ketchum," the agent said, his voice a gravelly baritone. "We seem to be making a habit of cleaning up your messes." There was no malice in his voice, only a kind of exhausted respect. It was the agent known only as Looker. "He's all yours, Looker," Ash replied, nudging the bound scientist forward with his foot. He was talking about other facilities, other buyers for his collars. "He has a network." Looker nodded, two of his agents hauling the now silent Zeros to his feet. "We'll get it out of him. The data you and Mr. Clement were able to pull from his servers before the detonation is already proving invaluable. You did good work here today." He paused, his gaze lingering on Ash for a moment longer than necessary. "Dangerous work. The energy spike from your intervention with that Metagross was picked up by every major satellite from Kalos to Unova. You lit up the grid like a Christmas tree, son." Ash just shrugged. "I did what I had to do." "I know," Looker said, a hint of something that sounded like a warning in his tone. "Just be aware, when you shine that brightly, you're bound to attract attention from more than just the bad guys." He gave a curt nod, then escorted a hooded Zeros onto the helicopter. As the aircraft ascended, kicking up a whirlwind of dust and sand, Ash and Korrina were left in the sudden, ringing silence of the desert. The warning felt ominous. Korrina looked at Ash, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. What did he mean by that? Ash's eyes were fixed on the black helicopter as it disappeared into the azure sky. "He means there are people out there who are more afraid of power than they are of the people who abuse it." He turned to her, the hard lines of the battle softening as he saw her worried expression. He reached out and gently brushed a smudge of soot from her cheek. "But we'll deal with them when we have to. For now, let's go home." Home. The word resonated with a warmth that pushed back the desert chill. They flew back to Shalar City under their own power, the roar of Charizard's wings a triumphant beat against the sky. The news of Zeros' capture had already broken, thanks to a carefully worded press release from Professor Sycamore and the Kalos League. They were heroes. Ash and Korrina, the power couple who had brought down the ghost of Team Flare. But Looker's warning lingered in the back of Ash's mind, a quiet, dissonant hum beneath the chorus of victory. Thousands of miles away, in a location so secret it did not appear on any map, that hum was a roaring symphony. This place was not a base, it was a sanctuary of sterile white walls, holographic displays, and silent, purposeful movement. It was the global command center of the Aegis Foundation, a clandestine organization sanctioned by a secret pact between several regional governments. Their mandate was simple and absolute, to monitor, analyze, and, if necessary, neutralize anomalous power threats, or APTs. An APT could be a rampaging legendary Pokémon, a volatile dimensional rift, or, in exceedingly rare cases, a human being. Director Eris stood before the Central Command holotable, a towering display of global data streams. He was a man of indeterminate age, with sharp, severe features, and hair the color of polished silver. He wore a simple, perfectly tailored gray suit that seemed to absorb the light around him. His presence was one of utter stillness, a stark contrast to the torrent of information flowing around him. He watched a replay of the energy signature from the Lumiose power plant incident. It was a 3D topographic map of energy output, and one spike, a brilliant, golden-white pillar of light, dwarfed all the others. "Analysis," Eris said, his voice calm and devoid of inflection. A woman in a crisp white uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, stepped forward. This was Field Agent Lena, one of his top operatives. Designation, Ketchum, Ash. Source of the primary anomaly. The energy output is consistent with a massive, targeted infusion of aura. The purity of the waveform is unprecedented. It's not an attack, it's a transfer. He pacified a target that was being forced into a state of critical self-detonation. He weaponized empathy, Eris stated, his gray eyes never leaving the golden pillar of light. He forced his will upon another being's runaway energy state. Lena frowned slightly. That wasn't how she would have phrased it. Sir, by all accounts, he saved the Pokémon and prevented a catastrophic explosion that would have leveled half of the Lumiose Badlands. He demonstrated the ability to manipulate and overwrite catastrophic levels of energy with nothing but his biological output, Eris countered, his voice remaining unnervingly placid. He has, single-handedly, become the most powerful and most unpredictable variable on the planet. The Zero's situation was a symptom. Ketchum is the disease. A benevolent one, for now. But power of this magnitude, unchecked and ungoverned, is a precursor to catastrophe. History has proven this time and again. He swiped a hand across the hollow table, bringing up a new file. It was a complex flowchart, a series of contingency plans. It was titled, The Aegis Protocol. Agent Lena, Eris said. You will lead the containment unit. Your team has been selected. Your equipment is being loaded. You are to proceed to the Kalos region, intercept the asset, and bring him in. Lena's posture stiffened. Bring him in, sir. On what grounds? He's a public hero. Champion Diantha has practically given him the key to the region. The grounds, Eris said, finally turning to look at her, his eyes as cold and gray as a winter storm, are that he is a Class S threat. The same classification we would assign to a rogue Mutwo or a rampaging Groudon. This is not a punishment. It is a quarantine. We need to understand his power, quantify it, and ensure it can be controlled before it destabilizes an entire region. And if he resists? Lena asked, the question tasting like acid. Eris's expression did not change. Anomalous power threats are, by their nature, resistant. Your team is equipped with the latest generation of our energy-dampening technology. It creates a localized field that disrupts the flow of non-conventional energies. Aura, psychic power, infinity energy, it turns it all to static. His Pokémon will be limited to their natural, biological abilities. He will be rendered, ordinary. Eris turned back to the display. Persuade him to come quietly. But your primary directive is containment. Do what you must. The stability of the world is more important than the freedom of one man. Lena stood silent for a long moment, a conflict raging behind her professional facade. She was a soldier. She followed orders. But this felt different. This felt wrong. Yes, Director, she said, her voice tight. She turned and strode from the command center, her boots echoing on the polished floor, the weight of her mission settling upon her like a shroud. The return to Shalar City was triumphant. The citizens cheered them in the streets. Gherkin embraced them both, his voice booming with pride. Their friends, Clement, Bonnie, and Serena, who had flown in from Hoenn the moment she heard about the engagement, threw them a small, private party in the tower's dining hall. For a few blissful hours, they were just Ash and Korrina, surrounded by people they loved. They laughed, told stories, and for a little while, the world outside, with its shadowy organizations and creeping darkness, ceased to exist. Ash found himself on one of the tower's many balconies, looking out at the moonlit sea. Serena came to stand beside him, a soft smile on her face. You've changed, Ash, she said quietly. He looked at her, surprised. I have. You're calmer, she explained. More, centered. When we traveled together, you were like a lightning storm, always moving, always charging towards the next battle. Now, you're like the mountain. The storm is still inside you, but you're in control of it. And, she added, her smile widening as she glanced back towards the party, where Korrina was laughing at something Bonnie said, "You're happy." "Truly happy." "I am," Ash admitted, a genuine, unforced smile gracing his own lips. "Everything's just, clearer now." Their conversation was interrupted by Clement, who hurried onto the balcony, his poketch in hand. "Ash, sorry to interrupt, but I'm picking up something strange. A fleet of unidentified aircraft just entered Kalos airspace. They're not League, not police, and their energy signatures are blank. They're running some kind of advanced stealth technology." Ash's smile faded. The quiet hum of unease returned, louder this time. "Where are they headed?" Clement zoomed in on the map. The flight path was a direct, unambiguous line. "Here," he said, his voice grim. "Shalar City. Looker's warning. You're bound to attract attention from more than just the bad guys." Ash's expression hardened. "Get everyone inside. Seal the tower. No matter what happens, don't let anyone out." "Ash, what is it?" Serena asked, her voice laced with concern. "It's the people we were warned about," he said, turning to Korrina, who had come to the door, drawn by the urgency in their voices. Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. Their moment of peace was over. "Korrina, stay with them," Ash commanded. "Like hell I will," she shot back, stepping onto the balcony, her expression a mask of defiance. "We're in this together, remember? Your fight is my fight." He looked at her, at the fire in her eyes, and knew it was useless to argue. He wouldn't want her to be any other way. He gave a curt nod. "All right. But this isn't a battle to be won. It's a message to be sent." He pulled 2 pokeballs from his belt. Greninja and Charizard. Korrina summoned her own Lucario. They were ready. The aircraft arrived minutes later. They were not helicopters or jets. They were sleek, silent, manta-ray-shaped vessels that moved with an eerie grace, their surfaces a matte black that seemed to drink the moonlight. They didn't land. They simply hovered in a perfect circle around the upper levels of the Tower of Mastery, their presence an overwhelming, silent threat. A single vessel moved forward, a loading ramp descending. A figure walked down the ramp, not in military gear, but in a crisp, white Aegis Foundation uniform. Agent Lena. She stopped at the edge of the ramp, her expression unreadable. Ash Ketchum, her voice was amplified, calm and clear, cutting through the night. "My name is Agent Lena of the Aegis Foundation. By the authority granted to us under the Interregional Security Pact, we are here to escort you to a secure facility for assessment. Please come with us quietly. We do not wish for this to escalate." "I'm not going anywhere," Ash called back, his voice ringing with unshakable authority. "You have no jurisdiction here. This is Shalar City, and it's under the protection of the Kalos League." "The Kalos League is not equipped to handle a threat of your magnitude," Lena replied, her voice remaining level, though Ash could hear the faint strain in it. "Our mandate supersedes regional authority. This is not a negotiation." From the other vessels, teams of Aegis operatives rappelled down onto the surrounding balconies and rooftops. They were clad in stark white and grey armor, their helmets concealing their faces. They carried strange, rifle-like devices. Each team was accompanied by a Pokémon, imposing partners like Metagross, Conkeldurr, and Rhyperior. They didn't attack. They simply formed a perimeter, a closing cage of white and grey. "This is your final chance, Ketchum," Lena's voice echoed. "Surrender and come with us. Do not force my hand." Ash looked at Korrina. "Get ready." He took a step forward. "I'm not your prisoner. And I'm not your threat. I'm a Pokémon trainer. If you want to take me, you'll have to beat me." Lena let out a sigh, so faint it was barely audible. She raised her hand and gave a sharp, downward chop. "Activate the dampeners. Contain him." A low, vibrating hum filled the air. The rifles the Aegis operatives carried powered up, their barrels glowing with a sickly purple light. They weren't weapons designed to fire projectiles. They began to emit a visible field of distortion, a ripple in the very fabric of the air that spread out from them, coalescing into a shimmering, invisible dome around the tower's peak. Ash felt it instantly. It was like being plunged into ice-cold water. The vibrant, living tapestry of aura that was always a part of his senses suddenly turned to gray, fuzzy static. The warm connection to Pikachu, to his other Pokémon, was still there, but it was muted, as if shouting through a thick wall. He glanced at his wrist. The keystone, which normally held a faint, inner light, was as dull and lifeless as a common stone. "What is this?" Korrina gasped, stumbling a step. She tried to mega-evolve her Lucario out of instinct, touching her key stone, but nothing happened. The stone was inert. The bond was muffled. Energy-dampening field, Lena's voice explained, now tinged with something that sounded like regret. It neutralizes exotic energies. Your mega-evolution is useless. Your aura is suppressed. It's over, Ketchum. You're just a normal man now. The Aegis operatives and their Pokémon began to advance. A slow smile spread across Ash's face. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just been handed a new and interesting challenge. "You think my power comes from a glowing rock?" he called out, his voice full of chilling confidence. "You think it's a magic trick you can just turn off?" "My power," he declared, his gaze sweeping over the advancing soldiers, "is my bond with my Pokémon. And you can't turn that off." He turned to his partners. The silent, instantaneous communication was gone, but the years of understanding, the thousands of battles fought side by side, remained. They didn't need aura to be in sync. They just needed a look. Charizard, Flamethrower. Greninja, Water Shuriken. Aim for the dampener pylons. Ash commanded, his voice a sharp, commanding bark. His Pokémon didn't need Mega Evolution to be Titans. Charizard let out a bellowing roar and unleashed a colossal jet of fire, not at the operatives, but at one of the hovering emitters. At the same time, Greninja became a blur, its hands weaving as it unleashed a volley of spinning, razor-sharp shuriken made of compressed water, targeting a different pylon. The Aegis operatives were caught off guard. They had expected to face a neutered opponent. But a Charizard's fire was still fire. A Greninja's speed was still speed. The combined attacks slammed into two of the dampener pylons. They sparked violently and exploded, and the invisible cage flickered. For a split second, the oppressive static in Ash's senses cleared. It was all he needed. In that instant of clarity, his keystone flashed. A torrent of Mega Evolution energy, raw and untamed, burst forth, enveloping Charizard. It was not the silent, perfect transformation of his Lucario. This was a primal, explosive burst of power, a defiant roar against the suppression. When the light faded, Mega Charizard X stood in its place, black as night, blue flames pouring from its mouth, its eyes burning with loyal fury. The dampening field snapped back into place as the other pylons compensated, but it was too late. The transformation was complete. The Aegis operative stared in disbelief. The system was supposed to make this impossible. Lena watched from her command ship, her professional calm shattered. How? The field should have aborted the sequence. He forced it through, one of her technicians yelled. The intensity of his bond, for that brief moment, it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a screen door. He brute-forced the evolution. Mega Charizard X let out a roar that shook the very stones of the tower, a sound of pure, unbridled power. "Now we're talking," Ash said, a fierce grin on his face. "Pikachu, Thunderbolt. Korrina, on me." The battle began in earnest. It was a masterpiece of strategic chaos. Ash wasn't trying to defeat them. He was outthinking them, outmaneuvering them. He was proving a point. Mega Charizard X was a force of nature, its dragon claws tearing through the operatives' energy shields, its blue flames creating walls of fire to herd and separate their Pokémon. Greninja, using its incredible speed and the shadows, became a phantom, using smokescreen to disorient the enemy while its water shurikens disabled their equipment with pinpoint precision. Pikachu was a yellow blur, weaving through the chaos, its iron tail deflecting attacks, its electric attacks aimed not at the Pokémon, but at the operatives' armor joints, causing their systems to short out. Korrina and her Lucario were a whirlwind of focused martial arts. Without Mega Evolution, they relied on pure skill. Lucario's Metal Claw and Bone Rush parried and disarmed, while Korrina herself, a blur on her skates, used the environment to her advantage, kicking off walls and railings to deliver stunning acrobatic kicks to the helmets of operatives who got too close. This wasn't a fight, it was a performance. Ash's team moved with a synergy that the Aegis unit, for all their technology and training, could not comprehend. They were a family, fighting for their home. Ash himself was the center of the storm, directing the flow of battle with sharp commands and perfect timing. He moved with an athlete's grace, dodging energy blasts, sliding under a Rhyperier's clumsy swing, his mind 3 steps ahead of everyone else. He wasn't just a trainer, he was a field general of unparalleled genius. From her ship, Lena watched, her horror slowly turning to a dawning, terrible respect. Eris had told her Ash was a threat. He had shown her data, charts, and simulations. But he had never shown her this. The fierce loyalty of his Pokémon. The unbreakable trust of his companions. The sheer, brilliant joy he took in a battle, even one forced upon him. They weren't trying to maim or kill. They were systematically, almost playfully, disabling her entire elite unit without causing a single serious injury. The final move was breathtaking. Mega Charizard X seized one of the Aegis Metagross with its claws. Greninja used its long tongue to wrap around another's leg, and Pikachu hit a charging Conkeldurr with a perfectly timed Volt Tackle that sent it tumbling into its partners. The 3 opposing Pokémon were piled in a heap. Ash stood before the tangled mess of operatives and Pokémon. The battle was over. He hadn't broken a sweat. He looked directly up at the command ship, at the viewport where he knew Lena was watching. "Is this enough?" he called out, his voice clear and ringing. "Or do you want to keep going? My team is just getting warmed up." Inside the command ship, Lena stared at the scene of her unit's complete and utter defeat. Her best soldiers, her most advanced technology, all dismantled by one man, a girl on roller skates, and a handful of Pokémon, all while they were supposedly at a disadvantage. Eris's voice crackled in her ear from the command center, thousands of miles away. "Agent Lena, report. Has the asset been contained?" Lena looked at the screen, at Ash Ketchum standing defiant and magnificent amidst the wreckage of her mission. She saw the unwavering loyalty in the eyes of his Pokémon. She saw Korrina standing proudly at his side. She saw a hero, not a threat. And she made a choice. "No, Director," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "The asset has not been contained." She took a deep breath. "And I am officially aborting this mission. The Aegis Protocol, in this instance, is a catastrophic failure. The intelligence was wrong. We are the aggressors here." There was a stunned silence from the other end of the line. Before Eris could respond, Lena cut the channel. She gave a new order to her pilots. "Recall the teams. All of them. We're leaving." One by one, the Aegis operatives, bruised and bewildered, were airlifted back to their ships. The energy dampeners powered down, and Ash felt the world of aura rush back into his senses, bright and clear. The Manta Ray ships turned in perfect synchronization and sped off into the night, disappearing as silently as they had arrived. The top of the tower was a wreck. Smashed equipment, scorch marks, and cratered stone. But they were safe. They had won. Serena, Clement, and Bonnie rushed out onto the balcony, their faces a mixture of terror and relief. "Ash! You were amazing!" Bonnie cheered. That was, utterly terrifying and logically improbable, Clement stammered, pushing his glasses up. Korrina leaned against Ash, her adrenaline finally fading, leaving her exhausted but exhilarated. Just a normal man, huh? She teased, bumping his shoulder. Ash just smiled, scratching a triumphant Pikachu under the chin. He looked out into the night, in the direction the Aegis ships had fled. He had sent his message. He had proven that his power wasn't a weapon to be feared, but a bond to be respected. But as he stood there, the hero of Shalar City, a new, colder thought entered his mind. He had defied them. He had humiliated them. An organization with the power and resources of the Aegis Foundation would not simply give up. They wouldn't send another containment unit. Next time, they would send an army. And he had just declared war. Chapter 5, The Vow in the Twilight. The silence that followed the Aegis Foundation's retreat was more unnerving than the battle itself. It was a loaded, expectant quiet, the kind of stillness that comes before a hurricane makes landfall. On the battered pinnacle of the Tower of Mastery, surrounded by the debris of their victory, Ash and his friends stood under the cold gaze of the moon, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. Ash hadn't just defended his home. He had openly defied a clandestine global power. He had taken their best shot and thrown it back in their faces. This wasn't a rivalry with some hot-headed trainer or a clash with a criminal syndicate. This was a conflict with a legitimate, if terrifyingly misguided, authority. They were fugitives now, whether they liked it or not. "They'll be back," Clement said, his voice barely a whisper. He was already scanning the wreckage with his APOM arm, analyzing the strange, alien technology of the dampener pylons. An organization this sophisticated doesn't just leave. This was a probe. A test. The next time they come, they'll be prepared for what you can do. So we prepare, too, Korrina said, her voice hard as steel. She looked around at the damage, at the scorch marks marring the ancient stones of her home, and her expression hardened. We can't just wait for them to show up again. We have to make a stand. Ash nodded, his gaze distant. She's right. Hiding is not an option. It would mean letting them win. It would mean admitting that our bond, our power, is something to be feared and locked away. He turned to face them, his eyes alight with a defiant fire. They want to treat me like a monster. Fine. But we're not going to hide in the shadows like one. We're going to do the exact opposite. He looked at Korrina, and a slow, audacious idea began to form in his mind. He took her hand, the one with the ring, the simple silver band and its uncarved keystone. "We're getting married," he said, not as a question, but as a declaration. Bonnie let out a confused squeak. Serena's eyes widened. Ash, Clement started, pushing his glasses up his nose nervously. "With all due respect, given that a shadowy international task force has just labeled you a global threat, is this really the best time to be planning a wedding?" "It's the perfect time," Ash countered, his voice ringing with conviction. "They want to isolate us, make the world afraid of us. So we'll show them connection. We'll show them community. We won't just have a wedding, Korrina. We'll make it a statement. We'll invite everyone. Our friends, our rivals, the champions, the gym leaders. We'll hold it right here, at the Tower of Mastery, for the whole world to see. We'll turn our wedding into a symbol of defiance. A celebration of the very bond they're trying to extinguish." Korrina stared at him, and the initial shock in her eyes melted into a brilliant, fierce grin. It was a crazy, reckless, and utterly Ash Ketchum plan. And she loved it. "A public declaration of war disguised as a wedding reception," she said, her voice full of admiration. "I'm in." She squeezed his hand. "Let's give them a party they'll never forget." The decision was made. A wave of manic energy replaced the tension of the last few hours. What followed was a whirlwind of activity. While Gherkin and the Tower acolytes began the extensive repairs to the damaged pinnacle, Korrina and Serena dove headfirst into planning the most improbable wedding in history. They sent out invitations, secure, encrypted digital messages that bypassed official channels, to a who's who of the Pokemon world. Brock and Misty in Kanto. May and Max in Hoenn. Dawn in Sinnoh. Iris and Sylvan in Unova. Vera Alolan, Ohana. Every friend and rival Ash had made on his long journey. And, most importantly, the pillars of the Pokemon League, Lance, Cynthia, Steven Stone, and of course, Kalos's own champion, Diantha. The responses came in almost immediately. Not a single person declined. They weren't just RSVPing to a wedding. They were choosing a side. Ash, meanwhile, focused on strategy. He, Clemont, and Pikachu spent hours in the tower's library, poring over the data they'd recovered from Zero's lab and Clemont's analysis of the Aegis tech. It's the negative energy, Ash mused, staring at a holographic projection of the Apex Collar's energy signature. It was a chaotic scribble of purple-black, a stark contrast to the clean, harmonic waveform of normal Mega Evolution. The malice. The thing I felt in the Chamber of Echoes. Zero's didn't invent this power, he just drilled a hole into its dimension and siphoned it off. And the Aegis Foundation, Clemont added, pulling up a new schematic. Their dampening technology is the opposite. It doesn't use negative energy, it creates a null energy field. It's a psychic dead zone. They're fighting fire with absolute zero. Both are extremes. Both are dangerous. Pikachu, perched on a stack of ancient books, pointed a small paw at the two schematics, then looked at Ash, a concerned Pika. In his voice. I know, buddy, Ash said, scratching his partner's head. One wants to control everything, the other wants to suppress everything. Both of them are terrified of balance. He stood up, a new resolve settling over him. Then that's what we'll show them. The strength of balance. The days leading up to the wedding were a strange mix of joyous celebration and tense anticipation. Shalar City buzzed with an energy it hadn't felt in generations. Boats and personal aircraft arrived daily, bringing legendary trainers from every corner of the globe. The city's hotels were filled to capacity. The atmosphere was electric, a festival of the world's strongest trainers gathering in one place. It was a breathtaking show of solidarity. Diantha was the first champion to arrive. The elegant, raven-haired actress and Pokemon master met with Ash and Korrina in Gherkin's private study. She looked at them not just as a champion, but as a concerned friend. What you are doing is incredibly brave, she said, her voice soft but firm. And incredibly dangerous. You have drawn a line in the sand, and you've forced all of us to choose which side we're on. She smiled, a hint of steel in her eyes. For the record, the Kalos League stands with the Tower of Mastery. We stand with you. She placed a small, encrypted data chip on the table. This is from an anonymous source within the Hoenn League. It's a preliminary report from Steven's investigation into the Apex Collars. Zero's had a distribution network, just as you suspected. He was selling them on the dark web of trainer forums, targeting the ambitious and the desperate. But there's more. The source code for the collars, it contains a failsafe protocol. A command that can activate every collar simultaneously. A cold dread washed over Ash. A kill switch. Worse, Diantha said, her expression grim. A mass activation. One signal could force evolve hundreds, maybe thousands of Pokemon all at once, anywhere in the world. It would be chaos on a global scale. Zero's may be in custody, but his legacy is a ticking time bomb. And we don't know who else has their finger on the trigger. The weight of their decision settled on them. Their wedding was no longer just a symbol. It was now bait. A gathering of the world's most powerful trainers, all in one place. It was the most tempting target imaginable for whoever was left of Zero's network. Let them come, Ash said, his voice a low growl. We'll be ready. The day of the wedding arrived, bathed in the golden light of a perfect Kalos sunset. The pinnacle of the Tower of Mastery, once a battlefield, had been transformed. The scorch marks were gone, the broken stones replaced. Silken banners of gold and blue, the colors of the tower, fluttered in the gentle sea breeze. Strings of glowing lanterns cast a warm, magical light over the proceedings. The guest list was a living history of Ash's entire life. Misty and Brock stood near the front, Misty pretending to dab her eyes with a handkerchief while Brock was already fawning over a stoic and unimpressed Cynthia, the Sinnoh champion. Dawn was catching up with Serena, both of them admiring the floral arrangements. Lance, the Kanto champion, stood in quiet conversation with Stephen Stone, their powerful demeanors a stark contrast to the festive atmosphere. And everywhere, there were Pokémon. Not in their Pokeballs, but out among the guests, a testament to the trust and camaraderie that defined this gathering. Pikachu was proudly wearing a tiny, custom-made bow tie, currently chatting with Bonnie's Deden. Ash stood at the altar, a simple, elegant archway of white stone, with Gherkin, who was officiating. He wore a sharp, dark gray formal tunic, the traditional attire for men in Shalar ceremonies. It was a far cry from his usual jacket and jeans, but he wore it with a natural, quiet confidence. He wasn't fidgeting. He wasn't nervous. He just watched the entrance, his heart pounding with a quiet, joyful anticipation. Then, the music began. A soft, gentle melody played on a harp. And Korrina appeared. She was breathtaking. She wore a flowing, Grecian-style gown of white and gold silk that shimmered in the twilight. Her blonde hair was woven with small, luminous pearls, and in her hands, she held a simple bouquet of graceful flowers. Her roller skates were gone, replaced by simple golden sandals. She was not the fierce gym leader, the successor, the warrior. She was just Korrina. And she was radiant. As she walked down the aisle, her eyes met Ash's, and the rest of the world, the famous guests, the looming threats, the weight of their responsibilities, melted away. There was only the two of them, and the path that had finally, after all these years, led them to this exact moment. She reached the altar, and Ash took her hands. They were trembling slightly. "You're shaking," he whispered, a small smile playing on his lips. "You're not," she whispered back, her blue eyes sparkling. Terrified, he admitted, and she laughed, a sound of pure, unadulterated happiness. Gherkin cleared his throat, his deep voice filled with a warmth that enveloped them all. "Friends. Champions. Masters. We are gathered here today not just to join two lives, but to celebrate the very ideal that makes us who we are. The bond. The unbreakable trust between human and Pokémon, and between human and human." He spoke of their journey, of their battles, of the strength they gave each other. As he spoke, the sun dipped below the horizon, and the sky was painted in magnificent strokes of orange and purple. "And so," Gherkin concluded, "by the authority vested in me by the legacy of this tower, I ask you now, Ash, Korrina, to speak the vows you have written." Ash turned to Korrina, his heart so full he felt it might burst. "Korrina," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "From the first day I met you, you've challenged me. You've pushed me to be stronger, smarter, and better. You're the most stubborn, fiery, and incredible person I've ever known. My life has been one long road, and for a long time, I thought the journey was the destination. But you are my home. You are my anchor. Wherever my path leads, I vow that it will always lead back to you. I love you. And I vow to stand by you, to fight for you, and to build our future together, today and for all of our tomorrows." Tears streamed freely down Korrina's face as she squeezed his hands. "Ash Ketchum," she said, her voice shaking but strong. "You came into my life like a force of nature and turned everything upside down. You showed me that strength isn't just about winning, and that the bond with our Pokémon is about more than just power. It's about love. You see the best in everyone, human and Pokémon alike, and you make us all want to be better. I vow to be your partner in every battle, your friend in every adventure, and your family, always. I love you more than words can say. Gherkin smiled, his own eyes misty. Then, with the exchange of these rings, let this vow be sealed. Ash took a simple, silver band from his pocket and slid it onto Korrina's finger, next to her keystone ring. She did the same for him, her ring a perfect match. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Gherkin declared, his voice booming with joy. You may, he never finished the sentence. A sudden, unnatural chill swept across the tower. It was not the cold of the evening air. It was a psychic frost, a wave of pure malevolence that made every Pokemon on the tower shudder. Bonnie's Deden let out a terrified screech and dove into her bag. Cynthia's Garchomp let out a low, warning growl, its head snapping up to stare at the sky. Every guest with a keystone, Lance, Diantha, Stephen, and several others, clutched at their wrists, their faces paling. The stones were growing cold, their inner light flickering like dying embers. What is this? Lance demanded, his eyes scanning the darkening sky. Ash felt it too, a familiar, sickening presence pressing in on the edges of his senses. The malice. But it wasn't a vision this time. It was real. It was here. Then, from the city below, the screams began. A wave of purple-black energy, visible even from the top of the tower, erupted from the center of Shalar City. It was a silent, pulsing shockwave of corrupt power. And in its wake, chaos. They watched in horror as Pokemon in the streets, the wild Pidgey, the pet Furfrou, the trainer's companions, were suddenly engulfed in the same agonizing, forced mega-evolution energy. A flock of Pidgey twisted into monstrous, misshapen forms, their cries turning to enraged shrieks as they began to attack buildings. A delivery driver's Tauros roared, its body unnaturally swelling with dark power as it charged into a cafe. This wasn't a targeted attack with collars. This was the fail-safe. It was a raw, unfiltered blast of negative energy, poured directly into the city, corrupting any Pokemon it touched. And it was just a distraction. The tower. Diantha shouted, pointing. Tendrils of the same dark energy were slithering up the sides of the Tower of Mastery itself, converging on the pinnacle. They weren't targeting the people. They were targeting the place. The energy that had built up here over centuries, the nexus of mega-evolution, it was being poisoned. And then he appeared. Not on a ship, not from the shadows, but coalescing out of the dark energy itself, stepping onto the wedding altar as if it were his stage. It was Zero's. Or what was left of him. He was no longer the clean, sterile scientist. His body was twisted, one arm elongated and covered in a carapace of black, crystalline energy. The red goggles were gone, his eyes now burning with a soulless, purple light. He was no longer a man using a dark power. He was the dark power. A conduit for the malice. A beautiful ceremony, Zero's voice rasped, a discordant chorus of his own voice and the whispering hunger of the void. So much, light. So much, connection. It is a feast. Behind him, the dark tendrils began to corrupt the wedding guests' Pokemon. Stephen's Skarmory, which had been perched calmly on a ledge, let out a shriek as the purple energy enveloped it, its metallic feathers turning a dull, sickly black. This is my gift to the happy couple, Zero's sneered, raising his corrupted arm. The end of the age of bonds. And the dawn of a beautiful, silent, obedient world. The wedding celebration shattered into a full-blown war zone. Get the civilians out of here. Lance roared, his Dragonite already letting out a challenging bellow. Clement, Serena, Bonnie, get inside with my grandfather. Korrina commanded, shoving her friends towards the stairwell. Ash didn't say a word. He and Korrina stood back to back, their wedding attire now their battle fatigues. The joyous celebration had become a desperate defense. Their vow, spoken only moments ago, was now being sealed in the fires of battle. So much for the honeymoon, Korrina said, a grim, determined smile on her face as she summoned her Mega Lucario, who instantly erupted into its mega form. "We'll take it later," Ash replied, his own Mega Lucario appearing beside him, its crimson eyes locked on the monstrous form of Zero's. "Right now, we have uninvited guests to throw out." The champions, Lance, Cynthia, Steven, Diantha, formed a line, their own powerful Mega Pokémon emerging to hold back the tide of corrupted Pokémon swarming the tower. Brock and Misty stood ready, their Onix and Gyarados prepared to defend the entrance to the tower, protecting the non-combatants. But Ash and Korrina only had eyes for one opponent. They charged forward, husband and wife, 2 Lucarios at their side, a storm of blue and gold against the encroaching tide of purple and black. They met Zeros at the altar, and the pinnacle of the Tower of Mastery erupted in a cataclysmic explosion of light and darkness. Their wedding day had become the first battle in the war for the soul of the world. Chapter 6, The Unlikely Alliance. The Tower Pinnacle, once a scene of matrimony, was now a maelstrom of elemental fury. The air crackled with the clash of dragon pulses and moonblasts, of hyper beams and hydro pumps. It was a symphony of glorious, terrifying power, the world's strongest trainers holding a desperate line against a tide of their own corrupted friends and allies. Steven's Mega Metagross, a chrome behemoth, was a bulwark of psychic energy, creating shimmering walls of light to shield guests while simultaneously firing flash cannons to drive back the maddened Pokémon. Cynthia's Mega Garchomp moved like a reaper through the chaos, its Dragon Rush a devastating arc of power, her face a mask of cold, focused fury as she fought to subdue, not to kill. But the heart of the storm, the eye of the hurricane, was the altar. Here, the battle was personal. It was a vicious, intimate dance of 4 figures, Ash and Korrina, and their twin Mega Lucarios, against the abomination that was Zeros. Zeros fought with a terrifying, unnatural grace. His corrupted body moved with a speed and strength that was no longer human. He didn't command his power, he unleashed it. Dark energy, thick and viscous like oil, lashed out from his crystalline arm, forming whips, blades, and shields. He was a living weapon, the malice's anger given form. "Feel it?" Zeros rasped, his voice a distorted chorus. He effortlessly blocked a synchronized bone rush from both Mega Lucarios with a shield of solidified darkness. "The despair of your city? The bonds you cherish, twisted into instruments of pain? This is the truth of your world, Ketchum. Connection is a lie. In the end, there is only control, or chaos." He launched a volley of dark shards at Ash. Before Ash could even react, Korrina's Mega Lucario spun in front of him, creating a blur of motion with Metal Claw, deflecting the shards with a spray of sparks. "Less talking, more fighting," Korrina yelled, her eyes blazing. She and her Lucario were a perfect mirror of each other, fierce and aggressive, pressing the attack relentlessly. Her strategy was to overwhelm, to give him no room to breathe. Ash's approach was different. He and his Mega Lucario flowed around the battle, their movements economical and precise. While Korrina was the raging fire, Ash was the deep river, watching, analyzing, seeking the weakness in the storm. He could feel it through his aura. Zeros wasn't a perfect conduit. The malice was pouring through him, but the fusion was unstable. His human shell was burning out, a faulty vessel for a power it was never meant to contain. "His energy is unstable," Ash called out to Korrina. "He's fighting on borrowed time. We need to push him past his limit." It was a gamble. To push Zeros meant weathering an even greater storm. Korrina understood instantly. She gave a sharp nod. "On your lead." They switched tactics seamlessly. Korrina and her Lucario moved to a defensive posture, their bone rush staves now forming a protective barrier, absorbing and deflecting Zeros' wild, lashing attacks. This freed Ash and his partner. "Now, Lucario. Aura Sphere." Ash commanded. His Mega Lucario leaped atop the wedding altar, its paws coming together. The sphere it formed was not the quick, tactical blast from before. This was a slow, deliberate gathering of power. It drew in the positive energy of the embattled champions, the hope of the friends huddled inside the tower, the fading golden light of the sunset, and Ash's own indomitable will. The sphere grew, not large, but impossibly dense, a miniature sun of pure, blue-white aura. Zeros saw the threat, his twisted face contorting in rage. Insolent child! You cannot fight the abyss with a spark. He abandoned his assault on Korrina and focused his full power on Ash, unleashing a massive torrent of black energy, a river of despair aimed at snuffing out the light. We'll see about that, Ash said, his eyes glowing. He and his Lucario were perfectly in sync, a silent conversation of shared resolve passing between them. The tiny, brilliant aura sphere launched. It did not streak across the battlefield. It simply moved, a point of absolute purity against a tide of absolute corruption. The two forces met in the center of the pinnacle. There was no sound. No explosion. Just a sudden, violent annihilation of energy. Where the black torrent and the blue sphere met, there was simply nothing. A perfect, silent void. For a split second, the light and the dark cancelled each other out completely. Then, the balance broke. The aura sphere, a concentrated point of pure connection, pierced through the heart of the dark energy stream and slammed directly into Zeros' chest. The impact was not one of force, but of purification. The pure aura was poison to the malice. Zeros screamed, a sound that was both human and otherworldly, as the golden white light spread across his body like cracks in obsidian. The crystalline structure of his arm shattered, and the dark energy holding his form together destabilized violently. This is not the end. He hissed, his body dissolving into a cloud of black smoke and purple sparks. The smoke didn't dissipate. It swirled, a malevolent phantom, before shooting away from the tower and disappearing into the night sky, leaving only a lingering chill and the echo of his hate. The moment Zeros vanished, the oppressive psychic pressure across the city lifted. The purple-black energy that had corrupted the Pokémon evaporated, leaving them confused, exhausted, and blessedly normal. The battle was over as suddenly as it had begun. Silence, broken only by the panting of trainers and Pokémon, fell over the ruined tower top. Ash fell to one knee, the sheer exertion of channeling that much focused aura hitting him all at once. Korrina was at his side in an instant, her hand on his back. Ash! You did it. We did it, he corrected, breathing heavily. He looked around at the scene. His wedding was a disaster zone. His friends and the world's most powerful trainers were battered and bruised. But they were alive. They had held the line. In the hours that followed, the Tower of Mastery transformed again, from a battlefield into a command center. The party was over, replaced by a grim council of war. Diantha, Cynthia, Lance, and Stephen gathered with Ash, Korrina, and Gherkin in the library, the great brass globe now a map of their besieged world. Clement, working remotely from his lab, had a direct line to the main screen, feeding them real-time data. The mass corruption event was global, Clement reported, his face pale with exhaustion. Small pockets of chaos erupted in nearly every major city. It was contained quickly, thanks to the local leagues, but the message is clear. No one is safe. Zeros was just a vessel, Cynthia said, her arms crossed as she paced before a bookshelf. Her usual calm was replaced by a sharp, analytical edge. A fanatic who made a deal with a devil he didn't understand. The true enemy, this malice, is still out there. And it can clearly create new puppets. And it's learning, Stephen Stone added, his voice low and serious. The attack on Shaller was a feint. Its true target was the tower itself. It was trying to poison a nexus of mega-evolution energy, likely to create an even bigger rift, a permanent gateway for its influence. The scale of the threat was dawning on them all. This wasn't a regional problem that one champion could solve. It was a global spiritual crisis, a war against an enemy that attacked the very soul of the Pokémon world. Then we must present a united front, Lance declared, his voice booming with authority. The League has always operated as a collection of regional powers. That is no longer sufficient. We need a unified command. A coalition. All eyes in the room turned to Ash. He was not a champion. He was not a formal member of any league. But he was the one who had faced this enemy twice and won. He was the one who understood it on a fundamental level. He was their nexus. Diantha stepped forward, a formal proclamation in her hand, already stamped with the seal of the Kalos League. The Kalos League officially recognizes the threat posed by the entity known as the Malice. We are also aware of the actions taken by the extranormal organization known as the Aegis Foundation. She looked directly at Ash. To counter both these threats, the Kalos League grants full operational authority to a new task force, to be based here at the Tower of Mastery. This task force will be led by Shalor's successor Korrina, and... She paused, a small smile on her lips, her husband, Guardian Ash Ketchum. It was a political masterstroke. It didn't just legitimize Ash, it gave him a formal title, a position of power rooted in Kalos tradition, shielding him from being labeled a simple rogue agent. It made him an official leader. We need more than just the champions, Ash said, accepting the role without hesitation. The weight of it was immense, but he didn't shy away from it. We need specialists. Researchers. Strategists. We need to build an army. And so began the formation of what the world would come to call the Guardian Alliance. The next few days were a flurry of communication. Ash and Korrina, now partners in leadership as well as in life, worked tirelessly. They reached out to their network, to the friends and rivals who had stood with them on their wedding day. Brock, with his extensive knowledge of Pokemon care and physiology, became their head of field medicine. Misty, a powerful battler with a deep understanding of water types, the most common type in the world, became a key strategic advisor for coastal defense. Clement was officially appointed head of technology and research, his genius now dedicated to finding a way to track the Malice's energy and counteract it. But not everyone was so quick to join. They sent a message to the Unova League, hoping to bring its powerful champion, Iris, into the fold. The response was a polite but firm refusal. The Unova elders, a council deeply rooted in their own traditions and myths, were wary. They saw the Malice not as a new threat, but as an ancient one, and they believed Ash's aggressive, head-on approach was dangerously reckless. They chose neutrality, a decision that created a worrying rift in the dream of a united world. The most difficult call Ash had to make was to Pallet Town. He sat alone in his temporary office, Pikachu on the desk beside him, the face of his mother, Delia, looking at him with concern from the video screen. Professor Oak stood beside her, his expression grim. An army? Delia said, her voice trembling slightly. Oh, Ash. I knew your journey was dangerous, but, a war. It's not a war I wanted, Mom, he said softly. But it's one we have to fight. I promise, I will be careful. Professor Oak adjusted his glasses. The energy readings from your wedding, they were astronomical, Ash. You have become something more than just a trainer. You have a responsibility on a scale few have ever had to bear. Your father, he would be immensely proud. The rare mention of his father struck a deep chord. Ash simply nodded, his throat tight. Thanks, Professor. For everything. The conversation ended, leaving Ash in the quiet of his office. He was a husband, a guardian, a general. The boy from Pallet Town was well and truly gone. Later that night, he found Korrina on the training grounds behind the tower, where they had sparred what felt like a lifetime ago. She was not training. She was just standing there, staring out at the dark sea, the wind whipping her hair. It's a lot, isn't it? She said as he came to stand beside her. The world on our shoulders. It's heavy, he admitted, wrapping an arm around her. She leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. But I'd rather carry it with you than not at all. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, a rare moment of peace in their new, chaotic lives. Then, a small, encrypted device on Ash's belt chirped. A message. It wasn't from any of their known allies. The encryption was ridiculously complex, a type Clement had identified as belonging to only one organization. The Aegis Foundation. Ash's hand instinctively went to the poke ball on his belt. Korrina tensed beside him. He opened the message. There was no text. Just a set of coordinates, deep in the mountains of the Sinnoh region, NA. Time, 24 hours from now. Below it was a single, cryptic image, a chess piece, a white knight. It's a trap, Korrina said immediately. Probably, Ash agreed, staring at the coordinates. But what if it's not? He thought back to the battle on the tower. To the Aegis agent, Lena. He had seen the conflict in her eyes. He had felt her hesitation. The way she had aborted the mission, defied her director, it wasn't the action of a mindless zealot. The agent in charge, Ash said, thinking aloud. Lena. She saw what we could do. She saw that we weren't the enemy. Maybe she's not the only one. Maybe there's a crack in their foundation. Or maybe they've just built a better cage and want to lure you into it, Korrina countered, her protective instincts on high alert. It's a risk, Ash conceded. But if there's a chance, even a small one, of turning a piece of Aegis, of gaining an ally on the inside, we have to take it. Their resources, their intelligence, they could be invaluable. This was his first major decision as a leader. A choice between caution and opportunity. He looked at the coordinates, then at the vast, dark world they had sworn to protect. They couldn't win this war just by being strong. They had to be smart. I'm going, he said, his decision made. Then I'm going with you, Korrina stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. No, Ash said firmly, turning to face her. You're needed here. You are the head of this alliance just as much as I am. We can't both be taken off the board. You need to hold the fort, coordinate with the champions, keep building our forces. I'll go alone. A small footprint is better for something like this. Korrina opened her mouth to argue, her eyes flashing with anger and fear, but she stopped. He was right. This wasn't just about them anymore. They were leaders. They had to make hard, strategic choices. She hated it. But she understood. Fine, she said, her voice tight. But you are not going alone. She jabbed a finger at his shoulder, where Pikachu was now snoozing. He goes with you. And Greninja. If this is a trap, I want you to have your best escape artist with you. Ash smiled, a genuine, grateful smile. He pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. Deal. As they stood there, locked in an embrace under the stars, they both felt the shift. Their honeymoon period, if it had ever existed, was over. They were no longer just a couple in love. They were generals on the eve of a clandestine mission, partners in a war against the encroaching dark, their bond the one unwavering light in a world rapidly falling into shadow. And in a secret location in the mountains of Sinnoh, a white knight was being placed on the board, ready to make its move. Chapter 7, The Heart of the World Tree. The air in the Sinnoh highlands was thin and sharp, tasting of pine and ancient stone. It was a stark, primordial landscape, the kind of place where myths were born. Jagged peaks clawed at a sky of bruised violet and gray, and the wind whispered through canyons with a lonely, mournful sound. Ash, clad in a dark, weatherproof travel cloak, moved through this wilderness with a silent, purposeful grace. Greninja, a shadow among shadows, flitted through the rocky terrain beside him, while Pikachu rode securely on his shoulder, his small form alert, his senses scanning their surroundings. The coordinates had led them to a remote, almost inaccessible plateau. At its center stood a circle of monolithic standing stones, ancient and weathered, arranged like the teeth of some long-dead god. This was the designated meeting place. It felt less like a rendezvous point and more like a sacrificial altar. This feels like a trap, Ash murmured, his breath pluming in the frigid air. Pikachu agreed, his cheeks sparking nervously. Ash held up a hand, and they halted at the edge of the stone circle. He closed his eyes, expanding his senses. He felt the ancient, dormant energy of the stones around them. He felt the life force of the hardy mountain Pokémon, sleeping in their burrows. And he felt one other presence. A single human, their aura tightly controlled, disciplined, but tinged with a distinct note of anxiety. They were alone. "It's clear," Ash said, striding into the center of the circle. "Show yourself." For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind. Then, one of the monolithic stones seemed to shimmer. The hard light camouflage projector deactivated, and a figure stepped out from behind it. It was Agent Lena. She was not in her pristine white uniform. She wore practical, dark gray tactical gear, her hair tied back, her face grim. Her hand was resting on the hilt of a holstered sidearm. Her eyes darted around, checking every shadow, before they finally settled on Ash. "Catch him," she said, her voice clipped and professional. "You came. You sent an invitation," Ash replied coolly, his own hand resting near the pokeballs on his belt. "Wasn't sure if I should bring a gift or an army." A flicker of something, not quite a smile, but a lessening of the tension in her face, appeared for a second. "Your reputation for reckless bravery is, it appears, well-earned." She took a cautious step forward, her hands raised slightly to show she wasn't reaching for her weapon. "I'm not here to fight you. I'm here because I'm a traitor." The word hung in the cold air. "I have defied a direct order from Director Eris," she continued, her voice a low, intense monotone. "I have scrubbed the logs of my communication with you. If he discovers this, I will be imprisoned, or worse. I am taking a colossal risk coming to you." "Why?" Ash asked, his posture not relaxing an inch. "Because Director Eris is wrong," she said, and for the first time, a crack appeared in her professional veneer, a fissure of genuine, passionate conviction. "I was raised in the Aegis Foundation. I was taught that power like yours is a wildfire that must be stamped out before it burns down the world. Order, control, suppression, those are the pillars of our philosophy. But what I saw at the Tower of Mastery, that wasn't a wildfire. It was a forge. It was creation. It was strength born from trust, not from fear." She stopped a few feet from him, her gaze unwavering. "Eris is escalating. After my failure to contain you, he has authorized the use of his ultimate solution. It's a project codenamed Genesis. It's a network of orbital platforms armed with perfected, large-scale dampener cannons. His plan is no longer to contain you. It is to create permanent, dead zones around any location you frequent. To cut you off from your power, and from the world, permanently. He would imprison Shalar City in a cage of null energy to keep you in check." The sheer, monomaniacal scale of the plan was breathtaking. Eris would suffocate an entire city, an entire culture built on the bond, just to neutralize one man. "He's as bad as Zeros," Ash said, his voice a low growl. "Just a different flavor of tyrant." "He believes he is saving the world from you," Lena countered. "He is blinded by his ideology. But there is a faction within Aegis, a small one, that is beginning to question him. We see the real threat. The malice. The data we've gathered from the Zeros incident, the global corruption event, it points to a singular, terrifying conclusion." She activated a small holographic projector on her wrist. A shimmering 3D map of the world appeared between them. It was covered in a web of faint, interconnected lines, like a spider's web of energy. All the lines, from Kalos, from Hoenn, from every corner of the globe where an incident had occurred, were converging on a single point. A point in the northern reaches of the Kanto region, near the border of Johto. "These are the resonance pathways of the Malice's energy," Lena explained. "Every time it acts, it leaves an echo, a trace. All the traces lead back here. To a place your legends call the Tree of Beginning." Ash stared at the map, a jolt of recognition hitting him. The Tree of Beginning. The massive, crystalline formation that was a living nexus for the world's aura. The home of Mu. He and Lucario had saved it once before, years ago. The tree is like a planetary amplifier for aura, Ash realized aloud. If the malice gets its hooks in there, it could corrupt the entire world's life force in a single stroke, Lena finished grimly. It could turn every Pokemon into a mindless, agonized puppet. This is its endgame. And our intelligence suggests that Zero's, or what's left of him, is already there. He's not just a puppet anymore, he's the high priest, preparing the altar. This was it. The heart of the war. Not a defensive battle, but a preemptive strike. My source within Aegis has provided a window, Lena said, her voice dropping lower. Director Eris is currently overseeing the final deployment of the Genesis platforms. For the next 12 hours, his attention will be divided. It's the only chance you'll have to get to the tree without Aegis tactical teams coming down on you like a hammer. My faction will do what we can to run interference, to scramble sensors and create ghost signals, but it won't be much. She looked him straight in the eye, her role as informant over, now making a personal plea. Stop him, Ketchum. For all his faults, Eris is a man of order. He cannot comprehend the chaos the malice would unleash. If the tree falls, the world Aegis is trying to protect will cease to exist. You are the only one who can fight this on its own terms. The hologram vanished. Lena took a step back, her expression hardening back into a professional mask. This meeting never happened. I was never here. With that, she activated her camouflage and melted back into the stone, her presence vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Ash was left alone in the circle of stones, the fate of the world now resting squarely on his shoulders. He didn't hesitate. He tapped the comms unit in his ear. Korrina, it's me. The Guardian Alliance mobilized with a speed and efficiency that would have impressed even Director Eris. The Tower of Mastery, now the nerve center of a global defense force, buzzed with controlled urgency. While Ash flew at breakneck speed towards Kanto on his Charizard, Korrina stood before the War Council, a brilliant and commanding leader. The target is the Tree of Beginning, she announced, her voice ringing with authority as a map of the area appeared on the main screen. Ash is our spearhead. He, his Lucario, Pikachu, and Greninja will be the insertion team. Their objective is to get to the heart of the tree, find Zero's, and sever the Malice's connection, whatever it takes. Cynthia stepped forward, her expression somber. The area around the tree is sacred ground, protected by Regis, Regirock, Regice, and Registeel. They are ancient, powerful, and will not distinguish between friend and foe. They will perceive any large force as a threat to the tree. Which is why we can't go in heavy, Korrina countered. Ash's team is small, fast, and has a unique connection to Aura. They have the best chance of bypassing the Regis without a major conflict. But they will need support. She looked directly at the Sinnoh champion. Cynthia. I need you. A small, elite strike team. You, me, and one other. We'll follow Ash in, acting as his rear guard. We'll handle any interference, human or Pokemon, so he can focus on the primary objective. I'm in, Cynthia said without a moment's hesitation. Who's the third? Lance asked, stepping forward, his cape swirling around him. You, Korrina said, meeting his gaze. You're the master of dragons. The area is crawling with wild dragon types. Your authority and power will be crucial if things get messy. Lance's lips curved into a grim smile. It would be my honor. The plan was set. Ash was the tip of the spear. Korrina, Cynthia, and Lance were the shield at his back. Steven, from his position in Hoenn, would monitor the global energy grid, ready to deploy his own resources if the Malice attempted another mass corruption event. The rest of the Alliance would remain on high alert, a global rapid response force. But as Korrina was finalizing the details, an elderly, stooped figure entered the library. It was Gherkin. He had been quiet since the wedding, a thoughtful, somber presence in the background. Now, his eyes held a strange, resolute light. "I am going with you," he said, his voice a low rumble that silenced the room. "Grandfather, no," Korrina immediately protested. "You're needed here. You are the anchor of this tower." "This tower is just stone and wood, my dear," he said gently. "Its true strength is in its successor. And its legacy, its most powerful and dangerous secrets, are in me." He looked at the assembled champions, his gaze ancient and full of sorrow. "There are techniques, forbidden arts of aura, that were sealed away for good reason. Techniques that can sever connections that should not be severed. Techniques that demand the ultimate price." A cold fear gripped Korrina's heart. "No. I forbid it." Gherkin placed a large, gentle hand on her shoulder. "You are a leader now, my granddaughter. But I am still your master. And I am still the guardian of this legacy. I have a duty to see this through to the end." His eyes met hers, and in them, she saw a love so profound and a resolve so absolute that she could not argue. "Trust me." The journey to the Tree of Beginning was a descent into a world of vibrant, alien beauty. After meeting up with his rear guard, Korrina, Cynthia, Lance, and a resolute Gherkin, all arriving on their own powerful flying Pokémon, they passed through the shimmering, illusionary barrier that protected the valley. Inside, the world was a wonderland of giant, crystalline flora that pulsed with a soft, internal light. The very air hummed with aura. But the beauty was tainted. A subtle wrongness pervaded the air. A faint, sickly sweet smell of decay. The crystals, which should have glowed with pure white and blue light, were veined with faint, spidery lines of purple. The aura, usually a harmonious chorus, was now a symphony with a jarring, dissonant undertone. The malice was already here, its poison seeping into the heart of the world. They landed near one of the tree's main entrances, a gaping crystalline cave. "This is as far as our Pokémon can take us," Lance said, recalling his Dragonite. "From here, we go on foot." As they prepared to enter, the ground began to tremble. A section of the crystal landscape shifted and reformed, rising up into a towering, humanoid shape of solid rock and glowing orange lights. Rock. It stood before them, a silent, implacable guardian, its stone arms crossed. "It's here to block our path," Cynthia murmured, her hand reaching for her Garchomp's pokeball. "Wait," Ash said, stepping forward. He didn't reach for a weapon. He held up his hand, palm open, and focused his aura, projecting. Not a challenge, but a clear, urgent message of intent. "The tree is sick. We are here to heal it. An enemy is within." Rock remained motionless for a long moment. Then, slowly, it lowered its arms. It took a single, ground-shaking step to the side, clearing the entrance. It did not offer help, but it would not offer hindrance. It recognized the purity of Ash's intent. The group entered the tree's interior, a breathtaking cavern of glowing crystals. But the deeper they went, the more pronounced the corruption became. The purple veins were thicker here, the dissonant hum of the malice louder. They passed pools of crystal-clear water that were now stagnant and murky, coated in a strange, oily film. Suddenly, a series of shapes dropped from the ceiling. Not Pokémon. They were Aegis Foundation hunter-killer drones, sleek, spider-like machines that scuttled down the crystal walls, their single red optical sensors locking onto the group. "Lena's diversion didn't last long," Lance growled. "They're not the main problem," Korrina yelled, as from a side tunnel, a squad of Aegis operatives in heavy, exoskeletal armor marched into view. They were armed with massive sonic cannons and cryoblasters. "Go!" Korrina shouted at Ash. "We'll handle this. Get to the heart." Ash didn't need to be told twice. He, Pikachu, and Gherkin broke into a sprint, heading deeper into the tree. Behind them, the battle erupted. Korrina's Mega Lucario and Cynthia's Mega Garchomp became a blur of motion, a dance of steel and dragon fury against the Aegis operatives. Lance faced down the drones, his Gyarados, summoned in a flash, letting loose a torrent of water that short-circuited the machines. The rear guard was holding. Ash, Gherkin, and Pikachu ran through winding, glowing tunnels, following the ever-strengthening pulse of the Malice's corruption. They finally burst into the heart of the tree, a vast, cathedral-like chamber where all the crystalline arteries of the great organism converged. And the sight before them was a vision from a nightmare. The heart itself, a colossal, pulsating crystal that should have been a brilliant white, was almost entirely consumed by a growth of jagged, purple-black crystal. It looked like a cancer. And embedded in it, like a parasite fused to its host, was a massive, horrific device of twisted metal and dark energy conduits. It was a gargantuan apex collar, latched onto the very heart of the world, pumping the Malice's poison directly into it. And standing before it, his back to them, was Zero's. He had changed again. His entire body was now a grotesque fusion of man and Malice crystal. He looked less human than ever, more like a statue of jagged darkness, his form barely containing the chaotic energy within. He was tending to the device, his corrupted hands adjusting conduits, his head cocked as if listening to the tree's dying screams. "It is almost complete," Zero's voice echoed in the chamber, the discordant chorus now deeper, more resonant. "Soon, the symphony of despair will begin. The whole world will feel the glorious, silent peace of my beautiful world." Zero's. Ash yelled, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. The creature turned. Its face was a nightmare mask of crystal and shadow, but the burning, hateful purple eyes were the same. "The anomaly. You have come to witness the apotheosis." He raised a hand, and the chamber floor erupted. Golems of corrupted crystal, animated by the Malice, rose from the ground, their forms shifting and unstable, their eyes glowing with the same purple madness. They lumbered towards Ash and Gherkin. "I will handle the puppets," Gherkin said, his expression serene. He drew himself up to his full height, and for the first time, Ash felt the true, staggering depth of the old man's aura. It was a deep, ancient ocean of power. "You, Ash, must destroy that device. It is the only way." Gherkin strode forward to meet the crystal golems, his hands glowing with a golden light. Ash didn't watch. He trusted the old master. He and Pikachu charged straight for Zero's and the great, parasitic machine. Greninja, Water Shuriken. Pikachu, Thunderbolt. Aim for the conduits. Ash commanded. A volley of attacks slammed into the massive device. The conduit sparked and fizzled, but the dark crystal they were embedded in simply regenerated, sealing the wounds in seconds. Futility. Zero's shrieked, launching a wave of corrupted energy. Ash and Greninja dodged, the attack slamming into the crystal wall behind them, causing it to crack and turn black. This was a battle they couldn't win with brute force. The machine was healing itself with the stolen life force of the tree. "I need to get close," Ash yelled, formulating a desperate plan. "Distract him." Pikachu and Greninja became a blur of yellow and blue, their attacks fast and relentless, forcing Zero's to focus on defending himself. Under the cover of their assault, Ash sprinted towards the device. He leaped onto its metallic base, his hands glowing with his own aura. He wasn't trying to destroy it. He was trying to do what he'd done with the Garchomp, with the Metagross. He was trying to sever its connection to the Malice. He placed his palms on the main power core and pushed his aura in. The feedback was instantaneous and agonizing. It was like touching a black hole. The sheer volume of negative energy was 1,000 times greater than anything he had ever felt. It wasn't just a stream, it was an ocean. The Malice pushed back, flooding his mind with the despair of 1 billion dying stars, the loneliness of an empty universe. His vision went black. The strength left his limbs. He was being consumed. Then, a warm, powerful hand clamped down on his shoulder. It was Gherkin. He had defeated the golems, and now stood beside Ash, his own palm pressed against the device. His aura, a vast, golden, ancient power, flooded into Ash, reinforcing his will, shielding him from the overwhelming despair. I cannot sever this link, Ash. Gherkin's voice was strained, but clear in his mind. It is too strong, too old. But together, we can create a momentary weakness. Their auras combined, a torrent of pure, golden white light against an endless sea of black. The device shuddered. The black crystal encasing the tree's heart began to crack under the strain. Now, Ash. Gherkin roared. Strike the heart. It was the only way. To save the tree, they had to wound it. They had to destroy the corrupted part of its heart to stop the infection from spreading. Ash pulled back, his hand forming into a blade of pure aura. He looked at Gherkin, and in the old man's eyes, he saw not fear, but a peaceful, resolute finality. He understood. Ash plunged his aura blade not into the machine, but into the pulsating, purple-black crystal of the tree's corrupted heart. At the same instant, Gherkin let out a final, great cry. He unleashed the forbidden technique. He didn't just push his aura, he detonated it. He turned his own life force into a cleansing, sacrificial fire. A wave of pure, golden light exploded outwards from him, a self-destruct of the soul. The chain reaction was cataclysmic. Ash's targeted strike shattered the corrupted crystal. Gherkin's sacrificial blast vaporized the parasitic machine and severed its connection to the malice's dimension. Zeros, caught in the blast, let out one final, piercing shriek as his form was utterly annihilated, his essence scattered to nothing. The rift to the malice's dimension, deprived of its anchor, collapsed with a sound like tearing reality. Ash was thrown back by the force of the blast. He landed hard, his head slamming against the crystal floor. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the golden light of Gherkin's aura fading away, and Korrina, her face a mask of anguish, running towards him, having just broken through into the chamber. The last thing he heard was her scream. Chapter 8, The Siege of the Undefended. The silence in the heart of the tree was a profound and terrible thing. It was the silence of a tomb. The violent, corrupting hum of the malice was gone, replaced by the faint, agonizingly slow pulse of the wounded tree of beginning. The massive central crystal, where Gherkin had made his final stand, was now a fractured ruin. The cancerous purple-black growth was gone, shattered and scoured away by the old master's sacrifice, but a great, gaping wound remained in the tree's heart, leaking a faint, milky white light like blood from a vein. Ash awoke to the feeling of tears splashing onto his face. He groaned, his head throbbing with a pain so immense it felt as if his skull had been split in two. He blinked, and the world swam into focus. Korrina was kneeling over him, her body shaking with silent, racking sobs. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with a depth of pain he had never seen before. Korrina. He rasped, his voice hoarse. Her head snapped up, her grief momentarily eclipsed by a surge of desperate relief. Ash. Oh, thank Arceus. She helped him sit up, her hands trembling. He looked past her, and the reality of what had happened crashed down upon him. Cynthia and Lance stood a few feet away, their expressions grim and somber. There was no sign of Gherkin. Only a faint, lingering warmth in the air where he had last stood. Grandfather. Korrina choked out the word, and a fresh wave of grief overcame her. He's gone. Ash pulled her into a hug, holding her tight as the full weight of the sacrifice settled over them. Gherkin, the laughing giant, the wise master, the pillar of their lives, had given his own life to seal the rift. He had passed the torch in the most final way imaginable. Ash felt a hollow ache in his own chest, a mixture of profound gratitude and sorrow. He saved us, Ash murmured into her hair. He saved everything. Their shared grief was interrupted by a sharp, urgent call. Champion Lance. Get over here. It was one of the Aegis operatives from Korrina's rearguard battle, his helmet off, his face pale. He was kneeling by the remains of his squad's shattered equipment. Our long-range comms are back online. Something's happening. Something terrible. Lance hurried over. A moment later, he swore, a harsh, violent sound that was utterly out of character for the stoic champion. Get me a visual. Now. The operative patched the incoming data feed to a cracked but functional holographic projector. An image flickered to life in the center of the wounded chamber. It was a live news feed from Saffron City in Kanto. The image was apocalyptic. A colossal, swirling vortex of pure, black energy hung in the sky above the city, a bleeding wound in the fabric of reality. It was not a subtle rift, it was a gaping maw, and from it, the malice was pouring into the world, raw and unfiltered. But it wasn't just creating corrupted Pokemon. It was doing something worse. It was taking them. Pokemon were being ripped from the arms of their trainers, pulled from parks and homes, their bodies dissolving into streams of purple light that flowed up into the vortex like rivers of souls. Wild Pokemon, terrified and confused, were being vacuumed into the sky. The malice was no longer content to poison and corrupt. Enraged by its defeat at the tree, weakened and desperate, it was now simply consuming. It was harvesting the life force of an entire city to regain its strength. The news anchor's voice was strained with panic and disbelief. It's a mass disappearance. Hundreds, thousands of Pokemon are simply vanishing into that thing in the sky. The city is in a state of total panic. The Kanto League is attempting to establish a perimeter, but their Pokemon are being affected too. It changed tactics, Cynthia breathed, her face a mask of horror. It failed to take a place of power, so now it's attacking a place of vulnerability. Saffron City is one of the most densely populated, least naturally defended cities in the world. Then, the scene shifted. A fleet of sleek, manta-ray-shaped Aegis vessels descended from the clouds, taking up positions around the vortex. But they weren't there to help. They were forming a cordon, pushing back the local police and League forces. A new figure appeared on the holographic feed. Director Eris. He stood on the bridge of his command ship, his face as cold and impassive as ever, but his eyes held a chilling, resolute gleam. He was broadcasting on an open channel, overriding all other signals. To the citizens of Saffron City, Eris's voice boomed, devoid of any warmth or compassion. The entity you see before you is an extinction-level threat. It cannot be fought. It cannot be contained. It can only be excised. The Aegis Foundation is therefore enacting Protocol Genesis 0. We are preparing to fire a full-yield dimensional cannon into the rift. This will cause a localized reality collapse, sealing the wound permanently. There was a pause, a beat of cold, calculated silence. This action will result in the complete and total destruction of Saffron City and a 5-mile radius around it. There will be no survivors. This is a necessary sacrifice. An acceptable loss to ensure the continued survival of the planet. You have 10 minutes to make your peace. The broadcast cut out, leaving the world in stunned, horrified silence. He's going to wipe the city off the map, Lance whispered, his face ashen. Men, women, children, all to close a hole. It's monstrous, Cynthia said, her voice shaking with rage. It's the cold logic of a tyrant. Ash pushed himself to his feet, his body screaming in protest, his head pounding. He looked at the image of the vortex, at the terrified faces of the people in the streets below, and a fire ignited in his soul, burning away his pain, his grief, his exhaustion. It was a pure, cold fury. He turned to his friends, his eyes blazing with an intensity that made them all take a step back. Not today. His comms unit chirped. It was a direct, encrypted signal. He answered it. Lena's frantic voice came through, filled with a panic he'd never heard before. Ash, you have to stop him. He's locked me and my loyalists out of the command systems. He's gone mad. He sees this as the ultimate validation of his philosophy, a problem so big it can only be solved by total annihilation. Please, there are millions of people down there. The world is watching this. They need a hero, not an executioner. I'm on my way, Ash said, his voice a low, dangerous promise. He cut the channel. He pulled 2 pokeballs from his belt and looked at Korrina. The grief was still raw in her eyes, but beneath it, her own fire was returning. She was the successor. She was a leader. She was Gherkin's granddaughter. Go, she said, her voice thick but steady. End this. For my grandfather. For everyone. He nodded, a silent vow passing. Between them. Cynthia, Lance. Get Korrina and the tree's guardians out of here. Set up a global defense. The malice won't stop with Saffron if it succeeds. Without another word, he recalled Greninja and ran from the chamber, Pikachu a determined yellow streak on his shoulder. He burst out into the strange, crystalline valley and summoned Charizard. The mighty fire dragon appeared with a roar, sensing his trainer's urgency. Saffron City, Charizard, Ash commanded, leaping onto its back. As fast as you have ever flown. They shot into the sky, a black and orange blur against the clouds, leaving the wounded tree and the grieving hearts behind them. They were a thunderbolt of vengeance aimed at the heart of Kanto. Saffron City was a war zone of competing ideologies. The sky was a terrifying spectacle. The black hole of the malice pulsed and swirled, its tendrils of darkness occasionally lashing down to consume another screaming pocket of Pokémon. Encircling it, like birds of prey, was the Aegis fleet, their ships holding a cold, disciplined formation. And at the center of their formation, a colossal orbital cannon platform, the flagship of the Genesis project, was slowly descending through the clouds. Its primary weapon, a massive focusing lens of crystal and steel, was beginning to glow with a sickening, reality-warping purple light. The 10-minute countdown was ticking away. On the ground, chaos reigned. The Kanto League, led by a furious Sabrina, the Saffron Gym leader, was trying to evacuate civilians, their efforts hampered by the Aegis ground troops who were enforcing a hard quarantine line, trapping everyone inside the kill zone. It was a standoff, psychics and police versus high-tech soldiers, with the city's terrified populace caught in the middle. Then, a new player arrived. A streak of black and orange fire tore through the sky, flying directly towards the Aegis fleet with reckless abandon. It was Ash and Charizard. They didn't slow. They didn't try to negotiate. Flamethrower, Charizard. Full power. Ash roared over the wind. A torrent of fire, hot enough to melt steel, erupted from Charizard's mouth. It wasn't aimed at any of the ships. It was a line drawn in the sky. A brilliant, fiery declaration that a new power had entered the field. The effect was instantaneous. On the ground, a ragged cheer went up from the trapped citizens and the beleaguered league trainers. Hope, which had been extinguished, was suddenly, miraculously rekindled. On the bridge of the Aegis flagship, Eris watched Ash's arrival on his main view screen, his expression unchanging. The anomaly arrives, as predicted, he said coolly. He is irrelevant. Maintain the firing sequence. 5 minutes remaining. But sir. An officer protested. He's positioning himself between us and the rift. Then he will be excised along with the rest of the collateral damage, Eris stated, without a flicker of emotion. Ash knew he couldn't fight the whole fleet. He had to choose his target. It was a classic dilemma, save the people, or stop the cannon. He looked from the vortex consuming the city's Pokémon to the cannon charging up to annihilate the city's people. He chose to do both. Pikachu, I need the biggest thunderbolt you have ever imagined, Ash said, his voice low and intense. When I tell you, I want you to pour every last drop of your power into the sky. Light it up like the sun. Pikachu nodded, his body already beginning to crackle, his eyes narrowed in concentration. Ash then closed his own eyes, Charizard holding a steady hover in the turbulent air. He ignored the Aegis ships moving to intercept him. He ignored the pulsing vortex. He reached out with his aura, not to a single Pokémon, but to the entire city. He felt the terror of the people, the despair of the trainers who had lost their partners. He felt the fading echoes of the thousands of Pokémon that had been consumed. And he pushed his own will, his own hope, out into that sea of misery. It was not a command. It was a call. A plea. A beacon. Don't give up. We are still here. Fight with me. On the ground, Sabrina, her eyes closed in concentration, suddenly gasped. She felt it. A new presence in the psychic maelstrom of the city. A single, brilliant point of light, pushing back against the darkness. It was him. All over the city, trainers who had been cowering in fear, who had collapsed in despair, felt it too. A sudden, inexplicable surge of courage. A warmth that pushed back the cold dread. They looked up at the boy on the dragon, and they believed. The combined hope and will of 1,000,000 people flowed into Ash. His own aura surged, amplified 1,000-fold. It erupted from him, a visible, golden wave that washed over the city. The malice felt it. The vortex, which had been a stable, consuming whirlpool, shuddered. The mass of despair it was feeding on was being contaminated by an infusion of pure, defiant hope. The streams of light flowing into it faltered. The harvesting slowed. Eris saw the energy readings on his console spike. What is that? What is he doing? He was buying time. But the countdown continued. 2 minutes to firing. Now, Pikachu. Ash roared. Pikachu had been gathering power, his small body now a miniature sun of electrical energy. With a final, triumphant cry of Pikachu, he unleashed it all. A bolt of lightning of impossible scale erupted from him. It was a solid pillar of golden white energy that shot straight up, striking the heart of the Malice's vortex. The effect was explosive. The vortex didn't just shudder, it convulsed violently. The infusion of pure, positive electrical energy disrupted its very structure. The rift began to spasm, to flicker, its hold on reality weakening. But it wasn't enough to close it. And the cannon was still charging. 1 minute. Ash urged Charizard forward, flying directly towards the Genesis cannon. Aegis interceptors swarmed him, firing energy nets and sonic blasts. Charizard, with Ash on his back, became an impossible target, weaving and dodging, a master of aerial combat. He's a distraction. Eris realized, his cold calm finally cracking. He's drawing our fire. All ships, ignore him. Protect the cannon. But it was too late. Ash's target had never been the cannon itself. It was the focusing lens. As he flew, he drew 2 more Pokeballs. Lucario. Greninja. Let's go. They materialized in mid-air, landing gracefully on Charizard's broad back. In a silent, instantaneous flash, Lucario Mega evolved, his crimson eyes locking onto the target. 30 seconds. They were almost there. The air around the Genesis cannon was thick with distorted energy. Lucario, Aura Sphere. Ash commanded. Greninja, use the sphere as a launch pad. Water Shuriken, full power. It was a combination they had practiced 100 times, a move of impossible synergy. Mega Lucario launched a dense, perfectly controlled aura sphere. But instead of letting it fly, he held it, a stable platform of pure energy. Greninja, with its incredible agility, leaped from Charizard's back, landed on the surface of the aura sphere for a nanosecond, and used the forward momentum to launch itself like a missile directly at the cannon's lens. As it flew, it created a single, massive water shuriken. It wasn't the small, rapid-fire version. This one was huge, spinning with terrifying speed, glowing with a sharp, blue light. It was infused with its own battle bond energy. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Eris watched in horror, his orders to intercept coming too late. Greninja, a blue and black missile, threw the massive shuriken. It spun through the air, a blur of deadly water and energy, and struck the massive focusing lens of the dimensional cannon dead center. The lens, a masterpiece of Aegis engineering designed to withstand a nuclear blast, was not made to take a direct, high-frequency kinetic impact from a weapon infused with bond energy. It didn't shatter. It cracked. A single, beautiful, catastrophic fracture spread across its surface. 7. 6. 5. Fire. Eris screamed, trying to manually override the sequence. 4. 3. 2. The cannon fired. But with the lens fractured, the beam of reality-collapsing energy could not focus. Instead of a single, surgical beam, it was a wild, uncontrolled cone of purple energy that erupted from the weapon in all directions. One beam shot harmlessly into space. Another vaporized 2 of its own Aegis escort ships. A third lanced down and struck the Malice's vortex. The damaged vortex, already destabilized by Pikachu's thunderbolt, could not withstand the blast of its own type of chaotic energy. It imploded. With a final, silent scream that echoed in the minds of every psychic in the city, the rift collapsed, sealing itself in a flash of violent purple light, leaving behind only an empty, suddenly quiet sky. The Genesis cannon, its power spent, its lens shattered, went dark. Silence. Ash, hovering on Charizard's back, looked down at Saffron City. It was still there. Battered, terrified, but whole. Alive. On the ground, a tentative cheer began. It grew, swelling into a roar of pure, unadulterated joy and relief that washed over the city. They had been saved. On the bridge of his flagship, Director Eris stood amidst the wreck of his life's work. His cannon was broken. His authority was shattered. His philosophy was in ruins. He had been defeated not by superior firepower, but by a boy on a dragon who had refused to sacrifice anyone. He stared at Ash's image on the screen, and for the first time in his life, the cold, placid mask fell away, revealing the face of a man staring at the utter annihilation of his certainty. He had lost. Ash had saved the city. He had defied the executioner and faced down the abyss. But as he looked at the empty spot in the sky where the malice had been, he knew this wasn't over. He hadn't destroyed it. He had just starved it, wounded it. And a wounded, starving predator is the most dangerous kind of all. Chapter 9, Into the Abyss. The victory at Saffron City was not a celebration, it was a ceasefire. The world had watched, holding its collective breath, as Ash Ketchum single-handedly defied both a cosmic horror and a technologically superior army, and had won. Director Eris and the Aegis Foundation, their catastrophic failure broadcast live across the globe, had vanished, retreating into the shadows to lick their wounds. The immediate threat was gone, but the silence that followed was heavy with the certainty of a coming, final confrontation. Ash didn't return to a hero's parade. He returned to the Tower of Mastery, a place now shrouded in a quiet, dignified mourning. The grand halls, once filled with the energy of the Alliance, were subdued. Gherkin's absence was a palpable void, a missing note in the tower's ancient song. Korrina met him at the entrance, her expression a mixture of overwhelming relief and profound sorrow. They didn't speak. They simply held each other, a silent acknowledgement of the price of their recent victories. The Guardian Alliance reconvened, but the mood was different. The elation of their initial formation had been replaced by a grim, weary resolve. They had repelled the enemy, but they were no closer to defeating it. "We are trapped in a cycle," Stephen Stone observed, his voice echoing in the quiet library. He was patched in via holoscreen from Hoenn, his face etched with fatigue. "The malice attacks. We defend. It retreats, gathers strength, and attacks somewhere else. We are saving lives, but we are not winning the war. We are merely managing the decline. He's right, Cynthia added, her gaze fixed on the great brass globe. We cannot keep playing defense. Every time we fight it, we're fighting on our own turf, risking cities, people, and the world's lifeblood. To end this, we have to take the fight to the enemy. We have to go to the source. The source. The dimension of the malice itself. A place of pure negative energy, of which they knew nothing. To go there was not just a military operation, it was a journey into a metaphysical hell, a place that might not even obey the laws of physics. It's suicide, Lance stated bluntly, ever the pragmatist. We have no way to get there, no way to navigate it, and no weapon that can harm a conceptual entity. All eyes turned, once again, to Ash. He stood by the window, looking out at the sea, Pikachu a silent, supportive presence on his shoulder. He had been quiet throughout the meeting, listening, processing. He could still feel the echo of the malice's hunger, the profound emptiness he had touched when he tried to cleanse the device at the tree. He knew, better than anyone, what they would be facing. There is a way, Ash said, his voice soft but clear, cutting through the despair in the room. He turned to face them. Gherkin's sacrifice, it didn't just seal the rift at the tree. It left something behind. A resonance. A key. He looked at Korrina, and a silent, painful understanding passed between them. Gherkin's final, sacrificial act of aura had been so powerful it had permanently scarred reality, leaving an imprint of the path to the malice's dimension. Our Lucarios, Ash continued, mine and Korrina's. Their bond with us, their mastery of aura, they can feel that resonance. They can tune to it. Like a tuning fork finding a sympathetic frequency. You're saying they can reopen the rift? Clement asked from his own screen, his eyes wide with a mixture of scientific curiosity and sheer terror. Not just reopen it, Ash said. They can stabilize it. Gherkin used his own life force to close it from our side. If we use the combined, positive energy of our bonds, our two Lucarios acting as the focal point, we might be able to open a stable gateway. A bridge. The audacity of the plan was staggering. To willingly open a door to the abyss. But as they looked at the quiet, unshakable confidence on Ash's face, they realized it was their only path forward. And when we get there? Cynthia asked, her voice hushed. How do we fight a god of despair? You don't fight it with power, Ash replied, his gaze distant, as if he were seeing the answer in his mind's eye. You don't fight hunger with a sword. We're not going there to destroy it. I don't think it can be destroyed. We're going there to find its heart. Its core. There has to be a source, a nexus point, just like the tree was for our world. If we can sever its control over its own power, maybe we can neutralize it. Force it into dormancy. It was a plan born of intuition, of an aura master's instinct, not of military strategy. It was a terrifying leap of faith. But it was the only move they had left. The preparations were swift and somber. This was not a mission for an army. It was a surgical strike, requiring a small, specialized team. Ash and Korrina would lead, their Lucarios the key to the entire operation. Pikachu, as always, would be at Ash's side. Cynthia insisted on joining them. You will need a warrior who understands the myths of creation and destruction, she had stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. Her Garchomp was a powerhouse, and her own strategic mind was an invaluable asset. The final member of the team was a surprise. A message arrived from Lena, the rogue Aegis agent. It contained only a single sentence, I can shield you from its psychological effects. For a time. She was offering herself, and her knowledge of Aegis mind-shielding technology, to the mission. It was a risk, but one Ash was willing to take. She knew the enemy's enemy, and that made her an ally. They stood on the highest pinnacle of the Tower of Mastery, the same place where Ash had proposed, where they had been wed, where they had been attacked. The sky was a clear, star-dusted black. Below, the rest of the alliance, Lance, Steven, Brock, Misty, and all the others, stood as a silent honor guard. They were the anchor, the ones who would guard the gateway and ensure the team had a path home. Ash and Korrina stood face to face, their two Lucarios between them, paws almost touching. The Lucarianite on their mega stones, and the uncarved keystone on Korrina's wedding ring, began to glow with a soft, internal light. "Ready?" Ash asked, his voice low. Korrina took a deep breath. She reached out and touched the side of his face, her thumb tracing his cheekbone. "I was born for this," she said, her voice full of the strength he loved. "Our whole lives, they led us here. Together." He leaned in and kissed her, a brief, firm press of lips that said more than words ever could. It was a promise of return. They broke apart and turned to their partners. They placed their hands on their Lucario's shoulders. They didn't need to speak. They closed their eyes and reached out, not with commands, but with their whole beings. They poured their bond, their love, their shared history, their grief for Gherkin, their hope for the future, into their partners. The two Lucarios became conduits. Their bodies began to glow with a blinding, blue-white light. The resonance from Gherkin's sacrifice, a silent frequency in the fabric of spacetime, answered their call. The air in front of them began to shimmer, to distort. It did not tear or rip. It folded. Reality itself seemed to peel back, revealing not blackness, but a shimmering, vertical curtain of iridescent, oil-slick color. It was a doorway. "Lena, now!" Ash commanded. Lena, standing ready with a device on her wrist, activated it. A faint, silver aura enveloped the five of them, Ash, Korrina, Cynthia, Pikachu, and herself. The psychic buffer is active. It will filter the worst of the direct mental assaults, but it won't stop the ambient despair. It will feel cold. Stay focused. Stay together. With a final, shared look of resolve, they stepped through the shimmering curtain and into the abyss. The other side was not a place. It was a state of being. There was no ground, no sky. They stood on a platform of solidified thought that seemed to stretch into an infinite, colorless twilight. The air was thin and dead, and the silence was absolute, a crushing pressure that felt as if it could extinguish sound itself. And it was cold. A deep, penetrating cold that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the cold of absolute loneliness, the chill of utter meaninglessness. Lena's device was working, there were no voices, no direct attacks, but the ambient feeling of hopelessness was a physical weight, a constant drag on the soul. "This is its mind," Cynthia whispered, her voice sounding small and fragile in the vast emptiness. A universe of nihilism. In the distance, faint, ghostly shapes drifted through the gray void. They looked like Pokémon, but they were hollow, translucent echoes, their forms distorted by agony. They were the psychic ghosts of the beings the malice had consumed. "Don't look at them," Lena warned, her own voice tight. "They are memory traps. Engage with them, and they will pull you into their despair." They pressed forward, their path illuminated only by the faint, silvery glow of Lena's buffer and the stronger, defiant light of Ash and Korrina's auras. They were a tiny island of warmth and connection in an endless ocean of cold entropy. As they moved, the environment began to react to them. The formless gray began to take shape, pulling from their own minds, twisting their memories into weapons. The ground beneath Cynthia shifted, becoming the cracked and broken floor of the spear pillar. A shadowy, distorted effigy of Cyrus, the former leader of Team Galactic, rose before her. "This world is flawed," it whispered, its voice a parody of Cyrus's. "Emotion is a weakness. Why do you fight to save a world that is destined for ruin?" Cynthia faltered, her face paling at the sight of her old nemesis. But then her Garchomp let out a low growl, nudging her hand, and her eyes hardened. "Because its flaws are what make it beautiful," she snapped, striding past the effigy, which dissolved back into gray mist. The path before Korrina morphed into the Shalar City gym. A phantom of her younger self stood there, crying, having just lost a battle. "You're not strong enough," the phantom whimpered. "You'll never live up to his legacy. You will fail him." Korrina stopped, her breath catching in her throat. The ghostly image of her grandfather, Gherkin, appeared behind the crying child, his face etched with disappointment. The sight was a dagger to her heart. But then she felt Ash's hand take hers, his grip firm and steady. She looked at him, then back at the illusion. "My grandfather was proud of me," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "And I will not let his memory be used as a weapon against me." The scene dissolved. The malice saved its most personal attack for Ash. The world around him became Pallet Town. His mother stood before him, her face a mask of sorrow. "Why do you always leave?" she asked, her voice filled with a mother's pain. "Every time you go, you risk everything. Just stay home. Stay safe." Then, all of his Pokémon appeared. Not just the ones he had with him, but all of them. His Butterfree, Pidgeot, Charizard, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, every partner he had ever loved and, in some cases, left behind. They didn't look at him with love. They looked at him with accusation. "You abandoned us," they seemed to whisper. "You left us for the next adventure." It was a perfect, crippling blow, aimed at the deepest fears of a boy who loved his partners more than anything. The weight of it was crushing. He staggered, the strength leaving his legs. "Ash!" Pikachu leaped from his shoulder and landed in front of him, turning to face him. He didn't attack the illusion. He just looked at Ash, his expression one of absolute, unwavering trust. He nudged Ash's leg, a simple, grounding touch that said, "I am here. I have always been here. We are together." The illusion flickered. Ash looked from Pikachu to the specters of his past, and his own resolve hardened. He had made hard choices. He had known loss and farewell. But he had never, ever stopped loving them. That love was real. This guilt was a phantom. "My journey, my choices, they made me who I am," he said, his voice regaining its strength. "They led me here. To the place where I can protect all of you." He stepped forward, through the illusion, and the peaceful scene of Pallet Town shattered like glass. They had passed the test. They had proven that their bonds were stronger than their doubts. And then they saw it. In the center of the infinite gray, there was a structure. A twisted, nightmarish parody of the Tree of Beginning. It was a massive, gnarled tree made of black, pulsating crystal, and from its branches hung not leaves, but the hollow, screaming psychic echoes of the Pokémon it had consumed. This was the Nexus. The heart of the malice. And guarding it, sitting on a throne of jagged crystal at its base, was a figure. At first, Ash thought it was another illusion. But as they drew closer, he recognized the twisted, corrupted form, the burning purple eyes. It was Zero's. But this was not the Zero's from the Tree of Beginning. This was not a man fused with the malice. This was something else. He looked, whole, yet empty. His body was a perfect, idealized version of its former self, clad in a pure white lab coat, but his eyes were vacant holes into the void. "Welcome," its voice echoed, no longer the distorted chorus, but a calm, serene, and utterly terrifying monotone. It was the voice of Zero's, but devoid of all human inflection. "You have passed the preliminary diagnostic. Your emotional fortitude is impressive." "Zero's?" Ash asked, confused. "We destroyed you. You destroyed a vessel," the being on the throne replied. "A flawed, emotional, human puppet. I am what remains." The malice perceived the utility of his intelligence, his obsession with control. It absorbed his consciousness, purged his emotional impurities, and made him its administrator. This was the final horror. Zero's had gotten what he always wanted. He had been purified of the messy flaw of emotion. He was now nothing but cold, ruthless intellect, the perfect ghost in the perfect machine. He was the Malice's mind. The entity you call the Malice is not a predator, the Zero's thing continued, rising from its throne. It is a fundamental principle. Entropy. The eventual, peaceful heat death of the universe. Emotion, connection, love, these things are aberrations. They are chaotic variables in the equation. My purpose is to correct this calculation. To return all things to a state of perfect, silent zero. Behind him, the black crystal tree pulsed, and the ghostly Pokemon tethered to it screamed in silent agony. This world you've built, this is your beautiful world. Korrina snarled, her disgust palpable. It is a world without pain, because it is a world without feeling, Zeros replied. It is perfect. And now, your anomalous bond energy will provide the final catalyst to extend this peace to your dimension. You have brought the kindling to your own world's funeral pyre. He raised a hand, and the very substance of the dimension answered his call. The gray void swirled, rising up to form two colossal Pokemon constructs, a Groudon made of solidified despair and a Kyogre made of liquid loneliness. Your journey ends here, the administrator of the Abyss declared. The experiment is over. This wasn't just a guardian. This was the final boss, wielding the full power of this nightmare dimension. Ash looked at Korrina, at Cynthia. Their faces were pale but determined. This was it. The final battle. Not just for their world, but for the very concept of a world with love in it. Let's show him how chaotic we can be. Ash said, a fierce, defiant grin spreading across his face. He and Korrina stood side by side, their Lucarios taking a battle stance. Mega Evolve. In the heart of a dead dimension, two stars of brilliant, defiant light erupted, a testament to a bond that refused to be extinguished. Chapter 10, The Ashen Vow. The battle that followed was not one of sound or fury. In the silent, oppressive atmosphere of the Malice's dimension, it was a war of pure will, fought with light and shadow. The colossal constructs of Groudon and Kyogre, crafted from the very essence of despair, moved with a ponderous, inevitable gravity. They did not roar, they radiated a psychic pressure of crushing sorrow and overwhelming loss. Cynthia's Mega Garchomp, a creature of primal strength, met the despair Groudon head-on. Every dragon rush that connected felt like punching a mountain of grief. The impact sent shudders not through the air, but through her own soul, threatening to extinguish her fighting spirit. Lena, her face pale and beaded with sweat, frantically manipulated her Aegis device, creating targeted psychic buffers, shouting warnings. Don't let it touch you. Physical contact accelerates the mental degradation. Korrina and her Mega Lucario engaged the Kyogre of loneliness. It didn't attack with water, but with waves of isolating cold that sought to sever the bond between them, to make them feel utterly alone even while fighting side by side. Korrina fought with a furious, desperate tenacity, her commands sharp and precise, a frantic dance to keep the creeping frost of isolation at bay. But Ash saw the truth of it. These titans were not the real enemy. They were projections, massive, intimidating puppets designed to distract and drain their will. The true threat was the calm, serene figure on the throne. The Zero's administrator. He was the queen on the chessboard, and as long as he stood, he could create endless pawns. We have to get to Zero's. Ash yelled, his voice cutting through the psychic din. Korrina, with me. Cynthia, buy us time. Cynthia gave a sharp, grim nod, her Garchomp letting out a defiant, silent roar as it redoubled its assault, drawing the attention of both constructs. Go. Don't you dare lose. Ash and Korrina broke from the main fight, their Mega Lucarios flanking them as they charged the black crystal tree. The Zero's thing watched them approach, its expression unchanging, a mask of placid indifference. Predictable, it droned. You still believe the source of the problem is a single, defeatable entity. You seek to destroy the administrator. But I am not a being. I am a function. A part of this place. He raised a hand, and the ground before Ash and Korrina erupted. Not with constructs, but with their own memories, given sharp, painful form. A phantom of the Spearow flock that had attacked Ash and Pikachu on his very first day as a trainer, but this time their beaks were dripping with the Void's energy. A spectral, corrupted Mega Lucario, identical to Korrina's, rose to block her path, a manifestation of her fear of the bond she once struggled to control. "Face your own failures," Zero's voice echoed. "They are, after all, the building blocks of despair." Korrina faltered, staring at the dark parody of her own partner. But Ash didn't break stride. He saw the phantoms, acknowledged the pain they represented, and pushed past them. "They're not failures," he shouted, his voice ringing with a conviction born from a lifetime of falling and getting back up. "They're lessons. They're what made us strong." He poured his own aura out, a wave of pure, defiant positivity. It wasn't an attack. It was a declaration. The phantom Spearow shrieked and dissolved. The dark Lucario wavered as Korrina, galvanized by Ash's words, charged straight through it, her own bond with her true partner burning away the lie. They broke through the line of illusions and reached the base of the throne. Ash's Mega Lucario and Korrina's Mega Lucario unleashed a synchronized, dual aura sphere, a massive blast of positive energy that slammed into the Zero's administrator. The being was thrown from its throne, crashing against the base of the black crystal tree. For the first time, its placid expression broke. A flicker of something, surprise, annoyance, crossed its features. The shell of the man it had once been was not as perfectly purged as it believed. "Your emotional energy is illogical," it stated, pushing itself to its feet. "Its resilience is a statistical improbability." "It's called love, you monster," Korrina snarled, she and her Lucario pressing the attack. As they fought, Ash looked past the administrator to the great black tree itself. He saw the screaming, hollow souls of the consumed Pokémon tied to its branches. He saw the energy of the entire dimension flowing into it, and from it, into Zero's. The tree wasn't just a decoration. It was the power source. The administrator was a conduit, but the tree was the heart. His goal shifted. It wasn't about defeating Zero's. It was about saving him. And saving everyone else he'd consumed. "Korrina, keep him busy," Ash yelled, changing direction. He ran for the tree. "What are you doing?" she cried, her Lucario barely blocking a blade of dark energy from Zero's. "I'm not cutting the wires," Ash called back, placing his hand on the cold, pulsating trunk of the black crystal tree. "I'm changing the circuit." He closed his eyes and did the one thing the malice would never expect. He didn't attack. He didn't try to purify. He connected. He opened his aura completely, plunging his consciousness into the heart of the tree, into the collective consciousness of the malice itself. He was instantly drowning in an eternity of hunger, loneliness, and despair. It was the crushing emptiness of a universe without life, a primordial darkness that existed long before the first spark of creation. It saw life, saw connection, as a theft of its perfect, silent unity. It wasn't evil. It was just, empty. And it wanted everything else to be empty with it. "I understand," Ash projected into the heart of the void. His thought was a single, tiny candle in an infinite blackness. "You're alone." He felt the entity recoil, confused. It had only ever known fear and defiance from the light. It had never known empathy. Ash didn't stop. He reached deeper, using his own bond as a bridge. He reached for the core of the administrator, the last, flickering ember of the human, Zero's. He found it, buried deep beneath layers of cold logic and programmed obedience. It was a memory. A memory Zero's himself had long forgotten. A little boy, crying in a forest, lost and alone. A wild Pokémon, a small EV, cautiously approaching him and nudging his hand, offering a moment of simple, unquestioning companionship. A moment of pure, uncalculated connection. The very first bond Zeros had ever formed, before science and ambition had twisted him. Ash poured all of his own warmth, all of his love for his own partners, into that single, forgotten memory. He wasn't trying to overwrite the malice. He was reminding a part of it what it felt like to not be alone. The effect was a psychic earthquake. On the outside, the Zero's administrator froze, its attack on Korrina faltering. Its vacant eyes flickered. A flash of genuine human confusion crossed its face. That feeling. The black crystal tree began to shudder violently. The hollow souls tied to its branches stopped screaming. A faint, golden light began to glow from within the tree's dark heart. "What have you done?" the administrator shrieked, its calm shattered, its voice now tinged with the panic of the original Zeros. "The logic, the calculation is becoming corrupted." Ash pushed harder, pouring more and more positive energy, more connection, more love, into the system. He wasn't just a trainer anymore. He was a living conduit for every bond ever formed, a champion of connection itself. "The bond isn't a variable in the equation, Zeros," Ash's voice echoed, not from his body, but from the heart of the tree itself. "It is the equation. It's the one thing in the universe that creates more energy than it consumes." The Zero's administrator clutched its head, its form flickering between the serene administrator and the terrified human. The Groudon and Kyogre constructs, their controller's focus lost, dissolved back into the gray mist. "It hurts." The Zero's thing whimpered, the last vestiges of its humanity returning in a wave of agony as it was forced to feel again. He looked at his hands, at the power he wielded, and saw not perfection, but monstrosity. In a moment of horrifying clarity, he understood what he had become. "Release me," the human whisper of Zeros begged from within the chaos. "Please." Ash granted his request. With a final, compassionate pulse of aura, he severed the consciousness of Zeros from the Malice's network. The administrator's body glowed with a brilliant white light, then crumbled into a pile of fine, gray dust, his tormented spirit finally free. But the problem remained. The Malice, its administrator gone, its central processor in chaos, was now a rudderless storm of pure, negative energy. The black tree began to crack, ready to explode and unleash a wave of raw entropy that would annihilate this dimension and tear a hole in their own. "Ash, get out of there!" Korrina screamed, running towards him. But Ash didn't move. He stood before the convulsing heart of the abyss, and he knew what he had to do. This was not a fight that could be won. But it could be balanced. He turned to Korrina, a sad, serene smile on his face. "I'm not running from this." He looked at the uncarved keystone on her ring, the promise of a future they might not have. "That vow I made to you, to stand by you, to fight for you, it was the most real thing in my life." He raised his hands, and his own body began to glow with a light so brilliant it hurt to look at. He was gathering not just his own aura, but the light from Korrina, from Pikachu, from Cynthia, and through the gateway, the light of all his friends waiting for him. He was becoming a living vessel for the concept of connection itself. "This thing is a void because it's starving," he said, his voice now a chorus of love and hope. "It only knows how to take. So I'm going to give it something it can't consume." "Ash, no." Korrina cried, understanding his intent. "Don't you dare. That's not a vow you can keep if you're not here." "It's the only way I can," he replied, his form becoming almost translucent. "I love you, Korrina." With that, he plunged his hands, his very being, into the chaotic, exploding heart of the black crystal tree. He didn't fight the void. He didn't try to destroy it. He fed it. He unleashed an infinite, overwhelming torrent of pure, positive energy. Love. Hope. Friendship. The joy of a shared victory. The comfort of a quiet moment. The fierce loyalty of a partner. The unwavering belief of a friend. The warmth of a mother's hug. Every positive emotion he had ever felt, every bond he had ever forged, amplified a billionfold, was poured directly into the starving heart of the abyss. The malice, which only knew how to consume and nullify, was inundated with something it could not process. It was like trying to drink a tsunami. The positive energy didn't destroy the darkness, it filled it. It saturated it. The hunger was overwhelmed by fulfillment. The loneliness was swamped by connection. The violent, chaotic storm of negative energy began to quiet. The raging Black Sea calmed into a still, silent lake. The screaming, hollow souls were soothed, their forms dissolving not into nothingness, but into peaceful motes of light that were reabsorbed into the quieted whole. The dimension stopped shaking. The terrifying blackness of the malice was not gone, but it had changed. It was no longer a hungry predator. It was a dormant, balanced force. A part of the universe's great cycle, but no longer a threat to it. It was, for the first time in its existence, full. Ash's body, its energy completely spent, collapsed. Korrina caught him before he hit the ground, her Lucario, Cynthia, and Lena rushing to her side. The gateway back to their world was still open, a shimmering curtain of hope in the now tranquil twilight of the abyss. The final scene is not one of a parade. It is one of a sunrise. Weeks later, on the pinnacle of the Tower of Mastery, Ash and Korrina stand together, hand in hand. The world is safe. The Aegis Foundation, its leadership shattered, has been brought into the light by Lena and is being reformed under the guidance of the Guardian Alliance, its purpose now to understand and aid, not to control. The rifts are closed. The malice is quiet. Ash is changed. The experience in the abyss has left a permanent mark. He is quieter, his presence more profound. His aura is a deep, calm ocean, the boisterous energy of his youth tempered into an unshakable, gentle strength. He is no longer just a master, he is a sage. Korrina stands beside him, no longer just a successor, but a true guardian. She has known the deepest loss and has emerged stronger, a leader forged in fire, her grandfather's legacy living on through her unwavering resolve. She looks at the ring on her finger. The keystone is no longer a blank slate. On its surface, a new symbol has been carved, one they designed together. It is a simple, elegant spiral, a symbol of the journey. A path that always returns to its center. A vow. Think you've had enough adventure for a while, she asks, a playful glint in her eyes. Ash looks out at the rising sun, at the light spreading across the peaceful world they fought for. He squeezes her hand. Our adventure, he says, his voice full of a quiet, profound happiness, is just getting started. He leans down and kisses her, not with the frantic energy of a battle won, but with the gentle, enduring promise of a lifetime of sunrises to share. The Ashen vow has been kept. Their story, as partners, as guardians, as husband and wife, is truly just beginning. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.